Good evening. Today is Thursday, October 27th. Welcome to the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. Let's stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, can I have a motion to open the meeting? Can I have a second? All in favor? All right, and now I need a motion to approve the agenda. So move. Have a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, we're going to start tonight with some recognition, and I will let Mr. Hochreiter introduce the wonderful students that we have with us this evening.
Yes, we're very excited to welcome and recognize Alexandra Schaefer and Brendan Chen. These are two of our graduating seniors who have been identified by the National Merit Scholarship Program as two students of a pool of approximately 16,000 students across the country. That represents less than 1% of high school seniors. They were identified as a pool because they are the highest scoring entrants from New York State. All 50 states are able to recommend students to this program, and Brendan and Alexandra will represent New York State as the highest achieving students in New York State. They will move on as a finalist, and they will compete for upwards of $28 million of scholarship money. Wow. That will be identified and handed out later in the spring. We'd like to welcome Brendan and Alexandra to the podium to share a little bit about their high school experience. And I know it's early, but it's also college application time. So if you both could let everyone know sort of maybe where you're applying or where you think of applying and what you may want to study in college. Alexandra, welcome.
Hi, so I'm Alexandra. Most people call me Lexi. My high school experience has been a lot of ups and downs. COVID was definitely one that stuck out to me, the good and the bad. I also love science, so I've taken physics, chemistry, and biology, and I love doing labs. So all those labs are experiences that have stood out to me. Making friends, connecting with teachers, other students, just learning new things. It makes me happy every day. In terms of college, I'm not exactly sure where I want to go yet, but I do know that I want to study environmental science and focus on climate change. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Brendan Chen. I think high school has been, like Lexi said, very challenging, especially with COVID. But you know, every time I come here, I get to connect with teachers, students. I've taken an interest towards music, math, computing, and science. I believe that these were all subjects that I will be pursuing in my future further education. Sorry. Yeah.
Applying to schools, Brendan, how's that going?
Sorry. I think I'll be applying to some of the schools in the northeastern region, some of the top schools, but I have as good of a chance as anybody else.
Sure.
And I think music and primarily computing is what I want to study in the future. And thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We told them they could stay, but they certainly didn't end up being recognized by mistake, and I'm sure they have homework to do. So you're more than welcome to watch our board meeting or enjoy other activities. But congratulations and thank you for representing our high school and our school district. And we'll be following up to see how you fare in the spring and see what if you're awarded some scholarship dollars to help you with tuition. So congratulations.
Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. That's really exciting. They should be very proud of themselves. All right, so we are moving on to the audience comment section for non-agenda. I almost missed it again. Carmen, do we have anybody signed up for non-agenda comments?
I think you're not. Well, transportation, I don't see that under his comments. His superintendent report, so I'll go, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to call it the rule. She has a handle in there.
My name is Therese Six. It's nice to see you all again. I have 2 children at Blue Mountain. I'm here to publicly provide the board and parents with an update on my concerns of overcrowding on middle school buses, which I detailed at the September 21st and October 12th meetings. I finally received capacity data for each full-size middle school bus run yesterday afternoon from Mr. Hochreiter. I also accepted his offer to meet along with Mrs. Gilio to discuss my concerns. That said, I pushed to get this capacity data ahead of tonight's meeting, as this is a safety issue in which the data is very clear. It shows, as I suspected, overcrowding on 2 morning bus runs and 2 afternoon bus runs, as I've highlighted in yellow. I think, Carmen, I don't know, did you pass?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to. I also provided you with a visual representation of 62 students on a bus versus the average capacity of 42 students per bus that was listed in the data I was given. It's a very simple diagram, forgive me. I'm not an artist, but you can see that the difference is glaring. These 4 runs are operating at 82 to 86% capacity based on seating for 72 elementary school aged students. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration standard quotes, school bus manufacturers determine maximum seating capacity of school buses based on 3 small elementary school age persons or 2 high school age persons per the typical 39-inch school bus seat. Now, this is important. Persons sitting or sitting partially outside, persons not sitting or sitting partially outside of the school bus seats will not be afforded the occupant protection provided by school bus seats. Further, safety guidelines for pupil transportation states, and I quote, due to the variation in sizes of children of different ages, states and school districts should exercise judgment in deciding how many students are actually transported in a school bus. We will soon be dealing with winter weather conditions, and with that comes poor road conditions, 2-hour delays, and early dismissals. That, combined with overcrowded buses, is a recipe for disaster. I would ask that a board member attend this yet to be scheduled meeting with Mr. Hochreiter and Mrs. Gilio so that we are all clear on what is discussed and what actions will be taken. Whether in person or virtual, I would hope that this meeting is at least scheduled before the end of the day tomorrow. In the meantime, I will continue collecting questions and feedback from parents to discuss at this meeting. I've heard from over a dozen parents regarding bus conditions, and several said they did not pursue this issue because they assumed that nothing would be done. Ensuring that the entire Hen Hut community feels engaged, included, heard, and are able to access needed information so that they can be active participants is pillar number 3 of your strategic plan. The needed information I received yesterday clearly demonstrates there's an issue on our middle school buses that cannot be ignored. Thank you.
Thanks, Therese.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your diagram.
Thank you.
It's helpful. Okay, anyone else signed up for non-agenda?
We do Chris Janaki.
Not bad.
Hey, Kristen.
Forgive me, I was actually typing this in the car on the way here. I got out of work late. I'm going to make 2 comments as 2 separate hats I wear. One is a parent of a special education bill. I would help you understand some of the obstacles a parent and a child can be faced with and how proper services from a school district can help that out. My son was diagnosed with ADD by his doctor at 6 years of age in 1st grade. In 2nd grade, he was referred for a special education evaluation teaching.
School testing showed he was categorized as a specific learning disability. SLD. This disability is actually not specific at all. It's an umbrella term for issues that interfere with a student's ability to listen, think, speak, write, spell, or do math. So it's a little of everything. SLD is the most common disability covered under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or what we call IDEA for short. Last year, Hanhud had approximately 369 students with documented disabilities. 36% of them, 134, had a specific learning disability. This also includes things like dyslexia, which is what my son has, in addition to his ADD. A learning disability can't be cured or fixed. Students learn ways to work around the functions that are broken. They do this by learning the methods from a special education teacher. I want to first try to explain what school's like for my son. First, his disability can't be seen. Kids like him don't know he has it until they begin to fall behind. Understanding why they're different is their first obstacle. Let's pretend their education is like skiing down a mountain alongside general education students. It's almost like a Paralympian and a regular Olympian. Because our brains work differently, we didn't get the ticket for the ski lift like our friends. We start up the slope on foot, with one leg, hands tied behind our back, and cracked goggles. We want to do well, we try our best, and eventually we get up to the top. But unlike our energetic peers, we're exhausted from the trip. When we finally start skiing, there are trail markers and slalom gates, but we don't know what they say. We point our one ski forward, but we go sideways. We're confused. When we realize we're last, we knock down most of the gates on the way, but we finished. We're exhausted and self-conscious, and we feel less. We know. This may seem dramatic. But I know this is what my child feels every day with every assignment he's given. A huge mountain to overcome with half of the skills he needs to finish. Knowing others see him as different and as behind. Special education services are a wonderful opportunity to give him the tools he needs to carve his own path and find a new way to finish. And they're vital to our children's success. And just keep going. I'm also speaking today as Septical president. I'm speaking on, this is my statement, not the board's statement, because I didn't run this by them. But I want to explain what SEPTA is. We represent special education students or any student in the district who has concerns. We speak for them and advocate for them when they can't advocate for themselves. The services my son had his story is not much different than any other kid's story. We were fortunate that many others have harder paths. I've learned more about the system and what it means it can be. I still understand very little of it. Terms flying all over the place, so many rules and laws, who can understand it? I was told much later, after our IEP meeting, that without that doctor letter, my son would not have qualified for services. He tested too high, basically too smart. Whereas today, as ninth grader, he can't write legibly. He can't take a note down from the board because his brain won't let him. So if he didn't get those services, I don't know where he would be today. So I'm very grateful for them. When I was given that information about our IEP meeting, I questioned what criteria is used to measure this eligibility and who exactly makes that final decision as to what the criteria is that's measured. Is it standardized? Is it the same statewide? I honestly don't know the answer to that question to this day. The more people I speak with as part of SEPTA, the more I'm hearing that there's a great deal of dissatisfaction with the system. I personally have been very happy with my son's services that he's been provided, and he's done very well. But I know everybody has different circumstances and everybody has a different situation. I don't know if what people are telling me is in fact true. I have no way of confirming that. I do know what people are telling me is they're concerned at the great deal of turnover in special education, staggeringly so. I cannot speak as to why. I can just say it's making many people ask. Has this been looked into? Do we have exit interviews when staff leave? Do we know if staff are happy, feeling like what's being done is the best thing for their students? I don't know the answer to that question. One thing I personally wondered is, after COVID, when kids are out of school for 2 years, why don't we have more students at least being evaluated, if not qualifying for special education? I don't know. I can't obtain that data. As a parent who's not one of those parents of those children, And I'm not privy to anyone else's information. That's not my information to have as a parent or president of SEPTA. It's not my business really. But the greater health of our special education department is. And the privacy is such that it's, I'm not privy to it. Except what's reported to the state, the data is not available. When issues and concerns that are being brought up publicly, when issues are being brought up publicly, we're told they're said not to exist. I can't confirm, I can't deny that. So I don't know. Where are the checks and balances? Where are the quality assurance? I'm concerned with what is not reportable to the state. I've heard things like we've had multiple children about 2 years behind that were denied even an evaluation. Yeah, I don't know if that took place, but how do we determine that? How do we make sure that things are happening the right way? Is data kept? Is there a way to verify that things are being done right? Do we have a comparison of parents that request referrals, evaluations versus teachers that request it? Where is that paperwork kept when this kid goes to school the next year? If that teacher moves, somewhere else, who holds that paperwork? Where is it stored? I don't know if it's in a computer system. These are questions people are asking me, and I don't know the answers. And I don't know that I'm allowed to ask those questions.
Chrissy, can I ask you a question? I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to
couldn't
ask
see
you.
you, sorry.
It's me, Alexa. Is this a conversation between the SEPTA leaders or?
We discussed it amongst ourselves, and I'm not saying we've asked and not gotten answers. I'm just saying these are concerns that are brought up. And Mr. Shookman answered a few questions the other day. It's not that we're not getting access. These are just concerns that people wanted to be, brought publicly.
I'm asking from a follow-up standpoint because your concerns are real. They're not just Hendrick Hudson. And we hear you. I see Lisa shaking her head because it's real, especially COVID and whatever else. What we don't know, we don't know. So I'm just trying to think how we can, I think after the meeting, we should circle back with you.
Yeah, and we can make a proper statement from the SEPTA board. I wanted to get this.
No, totally. I get, yeah, I understand.
Mhm.
And I think maybe there's a follow-up conversation because this is really important, that our students, trust me, it hits home for me because my son is part of special education too.
Yeah.
So, we'll make sure that we circle back with you, and if you want, consult with your other leaders and we'll get together kind of to discuss, and maybe there is some information that we can answer for you.
Mhm.
And then answer to that community. So thank you. I appreciate that you prepared all of that and spoke from your heart. I know that it's hard to talk about that stuff. Make me want to cry up here. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it for non-agenda?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so we're moving on to our consent agenda.
I need to sign up.
I'm sorry.
Did you want to make a public comment?
Yes, I thought it's on non-agenda.
Then you need to come. You
Let me
need to
sign it.
sign up.
Sorry, I got here late.
Yeah.
Okay, I still forget.
You're the last.
Good evening, John Benedictus. I live over on 35 Westminster Drive. Well, I don't have any children anymore. Finally, I want to welcome the new members of the board, people I haven't met. I do hope that you'll be able to do what the previous boards were unwilling to do, or unable, and that's to kind of start to cut down on some of this tax, spend and tax budgets that we've had, because it's really getting up there now, especially in these economic times. But the reason I'm here tonight is, are you aware that the town of Portland putting in a sewer line? Are you? Okay. And are we still having problems with the sewer, with the septic fields that are in Furnace Woods and the middle school? Because one of the biggest beneficiaries, and I'm not saying that the yeshiva should not have flushing toilets, okay? Let's not even conjure up that. But they are going to be one of the bigger recipients of this sewer line. And they have been having all kinds of problems with the town and Westchester County for a very long time. And when they were doing their expansion, they had actually gotten approval to put their own sewage treatment plant in the backyard of that thing because they had so many problems. And of course, now that'll all go away because they're going to tie into that. But has the district approached the town? Because the town, by the way, is going to cough up $2 million for that. Well, now they've gotten a grant, but the fact is it's $2 million worth of taxpayer money that's going to go into this line. Okay. And my question to the board is, has anyone from the district approached the town and said, hey, we have our septic problems galore. And the distance between the front door of the yeshiva to the front door or the back door of the middle school is less than a mile, okay? And I know there was talk years ago about trying to tie in to a sewer line coming out of the middle school. But now that they're going to put this sewer line in there, and of course, it doesn't affect Hendrick Hudson taxpayers, unfortunately. It's all going to go to Lakeland. The houses that will be affected by that are not in our district. And of course, the Shiva, isn't anything that we can do with it. And, but I'd just like to know, have you looked into that? Because it certainly might save the district a lot of wear and tear and not putting in septic fields. I know there was a capital improvement plan, I don't know how many years ago, where we spent a lot of money to fix, I think it was Furnace Woods at that time, okay? So, my question is, really, I think the district should certainly approach the town and say, look, guys, you're putting $2 million worth of taxpayer money in this thing. How about helping out Hendrick Hudson? I mean, now sewers are horribly expensive, and I can't ever figure out what a trench is to be so expensive, but it is. But the fact still remains that if they're going to benefit something like the yeshiva, how about stepping up and helping Hendrick Hudson? Okay. And like I said, please do not make me sound like I don't want the yeshiva to have flushing toilets, because that's not the issue. I want to see the middle school have flushing toilets.
Thanks. We really appreciate that. And we can check in with Anthony Merlini, who's in charge of facilities, and circle back to you. Did you put your contact info down?
I'm sorry?
Is your contact info down on the sign up sheet? Because
Email.
we can.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that we can report out on that. But thank you. Those are really great thoughts and we appreciate it.
But thank you.
Thank you.
I meant to bring in, did anybody see the printout of that thing that's in the whole description of it? That's in the Examiner. They did a rather lengthy
We'll check it out.
description of the project and where it's going to go and everything else.
Well, I'll look for it.
Thank you so
Actually,
much.
I have it before.
Thanks, Mr. Benedictus. All right. Anybody else? No? All right. So we're moving on to our consent agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. I have a second. All in favor? We do have a donation tonight that's been removed from the consent agenda. And this is from the 917 Society. They have donated pocket constitutions for the Hendrick Hudson 8th grade students. Awesome. Can I have a motion to approve this donation? Can I have a second? All in favor? All right, so we're sliding the strategic plan presentation up because we have our friends, I think, on the virtual world waiting to dial in. So
I'll let Greg get us ready, but I believe we have Ronnie and Dana and probably some other friends with us. And they're going to lead tonight's conversation through the unveiling of our strategic plan. This has been just about 12 months of work with heavy levels of community engagement and surveys and focus groups and individual meetings and committee work. This has been a really engaging process for our school community. Our community is well-versed in strategic planning for many, many, many decades. Our strategic plan was last updated around 2015, 2016, and we were ready to launch it again, and then Indian Point happened. And we were ready to launch after confronting the challenges of Indian Point and the pandemic. That it was time as we were reopening schools last year to re-engage with our strategic plan. And the opportunity that a strategic plan poses is to really re-engage with your community, families, taxpayers, residents, particularly those that don't have children, and then we'll be rolling this out to staff in various ways. So are we here? All right. Is this this is the video. So we rolled out a sort of a promotional video earlier this week to give our community an idea of what the strategic plan is, a quick overview of the 4 pillars. We have some movie stars among us. Our school board vice president, because our school board president was not available, so that was a task for the vice president and a couple other members of our various committees and staff. So if you haven't seen it, we're all going to see it right now, and I'm going to look away because there's nothing worse than listening, seeing, or hearing yourself on a video. So go ahead. Hello, Hendrick Hudson community. I'm Superintendent Joseph Hochreiter, and I'm excited and privileged to share with you our strategic plan. Our school community has deep roots in strategic planning. It sets a pathway for change and innovation. It sets a pathway for us to make sure that students' needs are being met and that we're preparing students for an ever-changing world and workforce beyond graduation. Our strategic plan began last year. It involved parents, community members, students, and teachers. There were interviews and surveys and focus groups to identify our strengths and identify opportunities for improvement. That work has culminated in what we're about to share and focus on for the next 5 years. Our 4 priority areas or pillars will help continue to make Hendrick Hudson a school of choice and a destination school district. We're proud of our work, and we're really excited to share it with you. Hendrick Hudson has experienced some great change over the last number of years. It started with the Indian Point Power Plant's closure and a lot of conversation with our elected officials to make sure that we were not economically harmed. And then came the pandemic, the likes of something that public education has never experienced. But in both instances, our stakeholders and community members rallied together to make sure our students were not negatively impacted and that our instructional programs remained top-notch.
I feel the strategic planning process is important because it provides the district with a framework to really institute change. It gives a common language for all of us, and it's also very important for me because I was able to get a lot of feedback from stakeholders that weren't just employees or members in the district. I got to speak to community members, students, and it was really eye-opening, and it really allowed us to make sure that all stakeholders' voices were heard. And I look forward to how that change or the pillars that came from that are going to help move the district forward and provide our students with the skills that they need to be successful.
I'm excited to be part of the strategic plan process because it allows stakeholders to be directly engaged with our district administration as we plan and prioritize projects for our students' future.
Our strategic plan is divided into 4 focus areas. These focus areas were the result of stakeholder input and our opportunity to improve our operations. The first is around student engagement. Our focus is to differentiate academic opportunities for all of our children, including our pre-K learners. We're going to focus on holistic growth, increasing student empowerment, advocacy, and independence. Our second pillar focuses on real-world experiences. This includes increasing cultural experiences in all of our classrooms, providing multiple pathways through learning opportunities and course offerings, and embedding real-world skills into the student experience in Hendrick Hudson. Our third pillar is focused on community cohesion, specifically clear and targeted communication. We're going to continue to improve our website and all of our external communications so all stakeholders are acutely aware of all of the happenings in the Hendrick Hudson school community. We're going to increase access, visibility, and information between the school district and all stakeholders, especially those that no longer have children in our school community. And lastly, our fourth pillar is around community cohesion and shared decision-making. We'll focus on making community involvement a specific task in decision-making processes in the district. We'll continue to expand opportunities to develop stakeholder leadership competencies and engage with stakeholders, and we'll make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded with all of our decisions.
I think the HenHUD School District Strategic Plan will be really great for the community because it shows that not only does the district offer strong academic education for all students, but also that they're looking to flex and expand what they're offering for students so that they're all successful in the future, whether it's learning how to become a better leader, understanding a little bit more about the world we live in, or exploring careers. I think this is a nice addition, and I think the community will find this beneficial to understand all this.
Thank you for taking this journey with us. We are extremely proud of our children and our staff and the outcomes that we've been able to achieve because of your support. We're really excited about the future of our district and hope that you find an opportunity to become involved or make sure that you stay connected to this important work. Thank you. Okay, and with that, we'll welcome our strategic plan facilitators who have led this journey with us, and I'd be remiss if I didn't share with the community that they spent a hot day in July with our school board. We're doing our strategic plan and helping identify priorities and our next step. So I know Greg's going to welcome them virtually, and then we'll turn it over to them.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Dana Britt, and I'm here with my colleague, Ronnie Banjarian. We are from the organization Education Elements, and we have had the honor and the pleasure to facilitate your district's strategic plan. It's hard to go after that video, getting a chance to hear directly from some of the members who were a part of this process, but we're hoping to share a few updates and how you all can be involved in this process, a little bit more about how you can get your hands on a copy of the plan, look at the plan, and a little bit more about how we got here, just in case you haven't had the opportunity to attend one of our previous board meetings where we shared updates. As we get our slides up, just in case you haven't met us before, my name, as I mentioned, is Dana. I am based in Maryland. I'm a former teacher and district administrator in the DC area, and I've been supporting districts with Education Elements for the past almost 7 years, primarily in the state of New York, where we support over 50 districts. So I'll pass it over to my colleague, Ronnie, to share a little bit more about himself.
Thank you, Dana. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ronnie Banjarian. I'm based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And this will be, and I'm very grateful for this fact that this will be my third year supporting Hendrick Hudson. The first year, we did a round of community engagement, and then last year was the strategic planning year 0, bringing all of the community together to put together this plan and going into this year, this first year of implementation. So I'm very excited about the prospect to be working alongside you all going into this year.
Great, thank you both. We're working on some technical issues. So Dana and Ron, if you could just hang on for a second. We're getting organized on our touch screen here. Here we are.
Sure thing.
I have to look at it in a different way.
Okay.
Okay. Dana or Ronnie, do you want to walk us through? We're looking at a couple of the slides in terms of your involvement with districts across the country, and particularly in New York State. If you want to, oh, here we are.
Yep, we got it. Hashtag
Might
one
be-
hen HUD.
Did Google Slides. I just want to let them know it's the most current version of the box. Okay.
Oh, no problem, Greg. If you want to take us to the third slide, just to give folks, if you haven't had an opportunity to meet, we have a couple other team members and even a few who aren't on this screen who've been a part of the process. But as we are going to continue to work with your district this year, we wanted to make sure that you were able to see the faces of those that you may engage with in one of the focus groups or one of the other opportunities that we have to hear from you as we move forward the implementation of the strategic plan. The next slide here is just sharing a little bit more about Education Elements as an organization. We've been an organization since 2010 and have supported districts all over the country in areas from strategic planning to leadership development to personalizing learning. But we are very proud to have partnered with the Hendrick Hudson School District now, as Ronnie mentioned, for the past almost 3 years. And the next slide just shares a little bit more about our impact in New York. And in particular, you can see some of the local districts that are near you all that we've also been able to partner with in various initiatives. And with that, I will pass it to Ronnie. He's going to share a bit more about how we got here, just in case you weren't a part of one of our previous sessions, who's been involved, a little bit more about the pillars. And the big reveal will be sharing more about the strategic plan document, both the PDF document and, as you'll hear, the dashboard, where you'll be able to, in the moment, go in and see what everyone is working on in terms of the strategic plan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dana. With all of this text that's on your screen right now, or if you're watching the live stream, or if you're watching the recording, we won't go through each one of these items, but suffice to say that this truly was a labor of love, and there was so much work that was done in the fall of last year when we did our first round of stakeholder engagement. We came on site in December and met the steering team in person for the first time, and we cross-sectioned the data from the stakeholder engagement, from the community survey and the focus groups, every which way, in order for us to understand what the priority areas for the district are going to be. So early this past year, we helped you all identify the mission and vision and values and the priority areas of the district. And then in April, we came back in person and started working with the planning teams. And each of those planning teams was in charge of one of these key priority areas, which, as Superintendent Hawkrider said in the video, what we're calling the pillars. You have a chance to see them much more deeply in the next couple of slides. And then we spent really the time that we spent away from you all over the summer, we spent finalizing all of the stuff, all of the materials, the design of the plan, the accessibility and the language that's in the plan. And we're really happy that we're now at the end of this road in this first year, officially launching the plan. On the next slide, we wanted to remind everybody of the teaming structure last year and just reiterate that this is similar to the teaming structure this year. So if you're out there and you want to be involved, these are the sorts of teams that you can be involved with. The project team is consisting of a few district leaders, as well as this year, the board VP and the president as well. And then we have the steering team, followed by 4 planning teams that were each in charge of each of the pillars. On the next slide, and you'll see this on the website once the website becomes live, we wanted to just name drop all of these wonderful people that spent so much time took so much time out of the past year in being involved and putting all of these materials and putting all of their ideas together. I heard yesterday or maybe the day before from one of the parents that we worked with, the quote was something like, "We spent so many nights sitting around a kitchen table, just brainstorming and putting all of our ideas together, and there are so many unspoken for hours here that have poured into making this strategic plan a reality." And so just take a moment to take a look at some of these names, and really also very importantly want to highlight that under the first three pillars, where you see in parentheses HS and MS, those were actually students. So we did have some student representation from the high school level and from the middle school level sitting on these teams as well. On the next slide, we wanted to remind everybody of the anatomy of a strategic plan. So what is a strategic plan? These are all the pieces that you'll see playing out today and over the course of the next 5 years. Starting at the very top, the roof of this house or structure, and moving all the way down to the foundation, we start at the mission and vision and beliefs and focus areas, thinking of those first 4 levels as the strategic direction. And then moving further along down the structure, thinking about what we need to do in order to achieve our goals, the objectives of the plan. And then and on the very last level in green, the explicit, discrete actions and projects and key performance indicators that actually go into making this plan a reality. And finally, on the next slide, before the big reveal, I wanted to remind everybody that the 4 pillars of the strategic plan, like was mentioned in the video, are these 4: student engagement, real-world experiences, clear and targeted communications, and shared decision-making. And importantly, it's interesting to note that the first 2 pillars kind of come together as a theme, thinking about this idea of well-rounded learners. These are the student-centered pillars. And the second 2 pillars, the theme is community cohesion, and these are the community-centered pillars. And now for the big reveal, I will say that as soon as this presentation is over, there will be a new landing page on the website, on the district website, called Strategic Plan, and there will be directions on how to access all of these materials. These materials are now yours, so they are fully and publicly available, accessible on the website, or maybe shortly after the end of this meeting. There are 2 key resources that combine together as the strategic plan. The first on the left is what we're calling the strategic direction, which is in a sense, what you might imagine a strategic plan would look like. It is a 10-page document that you can download. You can look at electronically or download as a PDF, and it basically codifies the strategic direction and priority areas of the district over the next 5 years. That has in it very explicitly stated the mission, vision, values, the priority areas, those pillars, and some strategies aligned to each of those pillars. But we understand that the limitations of a document like that is that it's static, those are things we said we would do in school year 22-23. But by the time we get to school year 26-27, so many things might have changed. And so we understand that that is not enough as part of a comprehensive strategic plan. And so what we've also supported in developing is what we're calling the implementation dashboard, which is a public-facing document that serves to track the progress towards the goals that are articulated in the plan. Both of these things are fully accessible to the public, and they will be fully accessible to you on the district website, like I said, either now or shortly after this presentation is over. Over the next couple of slides, I'm going to walk you through very briefly how you can use these documents and hopefully preempt some of the questions that you might have even before you access these documents. So the first thing I want to point to is how to read the strategic plan PDF document. You'll see that there is some front matter when you open the PDF. There's a letter from Superintendent Hawkrider to the entire community. There's a table of contents. There's this articulation of the mission and vision and values of the district. And then there are a few pages that kind of look like the one that's on the screen right now that fully articulate each of the pillars. So for example, the page that we have up here is Pillar 1, student engagement. you'll see the name of the pillar on the top. And then you'll see for each pillar, there are 3 primary initiatives that have been identified from last year. In this case, it's 1A, 1B, and 1C. And there is a brief description about what each of these initiatives hopes to accomplish over the next 5 years. On the next slide, I wanted to very briefly walk you through what you'll see when you go into the implementation dashboard. It is a Google Sheet, but you don't actually need a Google account to access it. So anybody that clicks on the link will be able to go into the sheet. And there are several tabs at the bottom. The first tab is called How to Use This Document, and it basically outlines all of the information that you'll see throughout the rest of the tabs that are in the document. Following, there's a tab that we're calling a glossary of terms that basically has a list of names of projects or acronyms or terminology that might be used in the plan that are or potentially pertain to particular projects or ideas in the world of K-12 education that might need a little bit more description as to, well, how does this pertain to my child or my student at Hen Hud? So we have a list of glossary items on that tab. And following that, what you'll see in the screenshot here on the right is just a full list of all of the discrete initiatives that the teams articulated. Hey, these are the things that we want to accomplish over the next 5 years. But then following that, there are 3 tabs that basically filter that full list into the 3 phases of work. And the 3 phases of work that we are considering in our work together, the first one is called implementation. And so those are projects or things or ideas that are either currently being implemented by the district or that we anticipate are going to be implemented within the first year, so school year 22-23. The projects that are in discovery phase are projects that we think are going to be, and we hope, going to be piloted in this first year. So piloted on a small scale, not full scale implementation. And finally, the projects that are in research phase are those projects that we're not quite ready to implement just yet, but which require more research, data gathering, planning, and assessment. And so the idea here is that this is a dynamic document that our teams are constantly, as the work gets started, that we are constantly coming in, updating and providing status updates and progress towards each of these goals. On the next slide, I wanted to briefly show you how these 2 documents talk to each other and how they map onto each other. So you'll see on the top, if you're looking for example, if we're looking at the student engagement pillar, you'll see that those are tagged as a column, rows in the column under the column pillar. And then you'll see, for example, initiative 1B, and those will be individual rows or discrete items or actions that are aligned to that specific initiative. In this case, 1B is focusing on holistic growth. And so hopefully over the course of these past few slides, and hopefully you'll have a chance to take a look at these materials tonight, and then in the future, hopefully we've elucidated a little bit about how you might use these 2 documents in tandem together as a member of the Hendrick-Hudson community. On the next slide, the final thing I want to share is that you will expect to see some upgrades to this dashboard as the work kicks off and as the implementation teams begin to actually implement the work. And so over the course of the next 2 months, before the end of the calendar year, you'll see that there will be 3 additional columns at least that are added to the dashboard. And each of these columns will speak to a particular tier of metric. It's one thing to say, hey, we are implementing this thing. It's another thing to say, especially for someone who is not involved in this process at all. It's another thing to say, how are we on track to meeting the goals that we set out for this particular project? How are we measuring if we are on track to meeting these goals? And in order to do so, we have crafted 3 tiers of metrics, and I'm going to walk you through them very briefly. We're calling them fidelity, effectiveness, and impact metrics. A fidelity metric is basically a measure of, did we do the thing? So if the thing was differentiated professional development for staff at the high school, that's as an example. The fidelity metric would be, did we do this thing? Did we administer this professional development? The effectiveness metric then is, was this thing successful? And the impact metric is, did doing this thing yield the long-term impact that we wanted? And you can think of these 3 tiers of metrics as sort of on a time axis, sort of like a very short-term, midterm, and long-term metrics. And we have drafted all of these metrics. We have drafts of these that are ready to go, but we did want to clear these we wanted to make sure that all of the people that are going to actively be involved in this work, school admin, teachers and staff, especially for those first 2 pillars that are directly impacting students. We wanted to make sure that they were the right metrics for the right increments of time. And so, like I said, over the course of the next 2 months, you'll see that we'll add these metrics to the implementation dashboard, but you will currently have access to the dashboard as I described it in the few slides that preceded this slide. I'm going to pass it off to Dana to talk a little bit about looking ahead, some milestones over the next couple of months, and then also how you can be involved. If you haven't been involved before, if you want to be involved to a great amount or a little bit, Dana's going to walk you through all of that.
Yes. So this month, November, well, I guess that's next month, November, we are considering it Community Engagement Month. So there are going to be a lot of different opportunities for you to be involved. If you remember last year, there was a community-wide survey that was administered. We're going to administer the same survey to be able to compare the results. So that's one way that you can have your voice heard in this process. We're also going to be recruiting teams. So if you'd like to be a part of one of the teams as well, and I'll speak a bit more to that in a moment. On November 29th, as Ronnie alluded to, we'll be meeting with the leadership team, particularly the school administrators, to make sure that they have a deep understanding of the plan and to start to think about how they are going to implement with their teachers and staff, and to also recruit them to be a part of the teams. And then if you choose to be a part of either the steering or one of the implementation teams, we'll have a virtual kickoff in mid-December, leading up to our big first on-site in the January, when we will take a look at community engagement and we will determine next steps and really dive deep. If that dashboard was exciting to you and you really want to know what the metrics are, then that might be an opportunity for you to join one of those teams who will be crafting and moving forward the work with those metrics. So as we've mentioned on the next slide, just goes through the 3 opportunities that you have. So you can sign up to join one of the teams, you can attend a focus group or a one-on-one interview, and you can also take the community-wide survey. And all of those links and the information about how to do all of those things will be coming out on the website. They're going to be hopefully a postcard mailer in the mail to you all as well as information in the newsletter. So we are just really thrilled about this plan and excited to have you all to continue to share your input of your ideas for the mission, vision, values, how we can get there together. With that, we wanted to pass it over to the board trustees if there were any questions.
Thank you guys so much. Do any of the trustees have any questions for the team?
I have 2 questions. One is, well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and a big thank you to all the community members involved in getting us here. I know I was one of them, and it was a very fulfilling experience, and I'm really looking forward to doing this work to get us into the next phase. I'm just looking at this and wondering, we're opening this tonight for access to the community. How do parents, community members, even students send questions? Who should they send questions to or comments to as they review the dashboard?
Yeah. There's information somewhere. Dana or Ronnie, do you want to explain that there will be contact information for folks?
Yes, so the hope is that in the dashboard, there will be a column that for every initiative will have an owner and a contact information. So if there's a specific initiative that you're hoping to give feedback on, we're hoping that you all will give feedback through the survey and through the focus groups and through that process. But if you are really excited and right away want to give feedback, we always would be happy to receive it. You can send it to Ronnie at elements.com, RANI, and he would be happy to read it. And I would too, Dana at elements.com, but Ronnie is your go-to person.
I will be happy and thrilled to read it.
Great. And then the other question is, as this is a living document, who has access to editing it as we move forward?
Great question. As of now, the owners of the document are our project team, which is the Education Elements team, and the district admin with our 2 board trustee team members. And I believe we are planning to keep it at that point where the project team is the key updaters, but we will also have the opportunity for the facilitators or the leads of each of the implementation teams to come to our project team meeting. We're hoping about once per month, and to be able to update through that process as well. So if there are suggestions, if we think maybe that those facilitators should be able to also access it and edit, then we could also go that direction.
And I have just one other comment. We do a good job. We get the community. We're usually reaching out to parents, and are we identifying the staff directly? Are we going to send a direct targeted email to them for recruitment and involvement?
Yeah.
Ronnie, do you want to share, or Superintendent Hochreiter?
Yeah, it's basically same process we used last year, description of, the communication will be different this year because we have a document to show, and people will be able to sign up or identify interest based on particular interests now that we have our 4 pillars. We're also, as Dana alluded to, having a day-long retreat after Thanksgiving with our administrative team to ask that exact question too. Who else, needs to be a part of this, and how do we recruit them specifically, whether it's grade level leaders or department chairs, or anyone. So we'll have a better idea when we get into some of the specific tasks of folks that we would want to reach out to. But I don't believe, Dana and Ronnie, when we put the all call out last year, I don't believe we turned anyone away who wanted to participate, correct?
Correct.
And then the other question here, because the whole first 2 pillars are really about students. So at what point do we, instead of us internally picking students we think might be interested, do we just push it out to the students or student groups to get their involvement and their engagement?
I think we're going to have to further explore that. One of the, if you remember, Erica, one of our concerns last year was that the level of participation we had was not emblematic of our district demographics. And so while we asked people to identify themselves to participate, we also did some active recruitment. So we may need to do that again. I'll let Dana and Ronnie sort of explore that a little bit, but that was one of the hiccups last year. Was we wanted to be very open and transparent, and whoever wanted to have a seat at any initiative could. But as our demographics shift, we wanted to make sure that the voices were representative, and they weren't initially. But I'll let Dana and Ronnie expand on that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. But in addition to that, Erica, I think you were asking specifically about recruiting students, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We last year, kind of behind the scenes before the students arrived at the planning teams, we were interfacing with, the school counselors, and I think at the high school it was the director of the student government, or the advisor of the student government, and we actually did end up having a pretty diverse pool of students that were really interested, and those winnowed down a little bit by the time that they actually showed up to those planning team meetings. But we're hoping, in terms of recruiting students again this year, we're hoping to take a similar approach. However, we are open to other approaches, especially if you think that it would behoove us to cast a wider net and recruit even more students than we did last year.
Yeah, I think that's important, so something to note.
How many implementation topics? How many of the dashboard items are highlighted as implementation for this year out of all of them? Do you know of him?
I think I can get that number for you. We currently have 17 discrete rows that are that have been tagged implementation. But I want to highlight again that that designation came after so many months of looking at all of the project canvases and all of the work that was done in planning teams, and with our project team understanding and articulating, hey, these things are already happening, but we want to expand them. Or this feels very feasible, low cost, and so this feels like a low-hanging fruit that could be implemented. But as we start off this work again this year, it could change. That list of 17 could end up being 20, or it could go down to 13 or 14. And that is, as folks that are actively going to get their hands in this work, especially if they're teachers and staff and school admin, if they realize that there are certain limitations that maybe as we were giving these our best guesses, then that's the beauty of this tool, is that we can say, okay, we're not ready to implement. We're gonna just pilot it. We're gonna put it back in discovery phase. And we're gonna implement it in the next school year. But that was a very long-winded way to answer your question, which is 17 projects that are tagged implementation.
Yeah, so I guess once you get to your next meeting with the steering committee, is that sort of where you'll 17 seems like a lot, and I'm sure they're all important, but it does concern me. It's thinking if each of them need a working group. Just hope that we get, we need to get a lot of participation if we want a diverse working group for each of those topics. And so I guess when we go back to the steering committee, just keep in mind, I'm asking the steering committee, just keep in mind, 17 seems like a far reach for 1 year.
Yeah.
But maybe easy.
That does, to clarify, we would have the 4 main implementation teams, and then within that, there may be certain people who might focus on one area or another. Others of them, I think, might not even have a working team. They might be so discrete that there's something that a building leader might be able to take it on, or a district staff might be able to take it on and move that work forward. So I know it does sound like quite a lot of items, but in choosing those, the project team last year felt that so many of them were already in implementation that they wanted to honor that, all of the work that teachers and staff and the district team were already building towards.
Got it. Okay, that sounds good.
Do we know the cost of implementing those 17?
No, when you see this and you look at the whole chart, there's really big tasks, and then there's really, really small tasks that would have no cost at all. So I don't think that there's been a financial analysis on any of them. I don't think. Am I wrong? Okay. So I think as they would push forward, it'd be right.
For example, one of the interests was exploring redesigning our website, right? So we would explore whether or not there's a cost to redesigning our website if we went with a new company, so on and so forth, because we pay a company to host our website. If we want to overhaul our website, we would have to find out, well, we would have to identify additional companies, what the timeline would be. Even before we get that far, what the end product would look like, other school districts that use different companies, and then speak with those companies, or in this case, BOCES provides a lot of our back-end tech support to identify whether this would be a new cost or would this be embedded in our service agreement that we have with them. That's just one example.
So we are out of the 17, do we have a dollar amount, what we can spend?
No, we're not
even there.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
But there is time as we move forward with these 17 that the admin team could bring them to the budget committee and we can look and see how they fit it. There's definitely time.
Sure. You know, some of the initiatives, you know, and I'm forecasting here. So I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but around real world experiences, last year that group was talking about more relevant electives for students and looking at what opportunities exist for students outside the 22 mandated credits that the student has to take in high school. So that may be a curriculum writing initiative and exploring other electives in other schools or internship programs or a lot of different things. Croton has a program for seniors where I don't know, most of May and all of June, they're doing internships or volunteering or those sort of things. So if that's one example that if that's a direction we go, we would have to spend some time to determine whether or not it's a new cost that will incur, or, and I had said this last year, whether or not we have to retire some initiatives because what we don't want to do, and I hear what Jen's saying about 17 initiatives, we don't want to keep adding more things to the plate if we don't take some things off.
Right.
So it's not just about cost, I hear you, but it's also about bandwidth, right? And what we have heard in public education for at least the last decade is more and more is coming on in terms of mandates from the state, so on and so forth, and not much is coming off. We do not want to exacerbate that.
Right, but I think what you were trying to capture is, do we have time? We want to move forward with something next fall. Do we have time to capture it in this year's budget coming up? So, and we've got planned presentations, I think at least 4 more over the next couple of months, right, Joe? To hear updates and where we have to make decisions on the budget. So I think
yeah, that's one of the nice things about the dashboard. It creates transparency to sort of not poke around, but look in on that document to see progress over time and see what they're talking about and see what some of the initiatives might be.
And then I have one other question. Just we're working with Ed Allen's, who worked with them last year. Is there a cost? Is this all budgeted for the work with them? Is it within our budget? Is it?
Yeah, it's within our budget, and Enrique has worked with BOCES. It covers 2 fiscal years. So this fiscal year and then next. And one of the reasons we try to use BOCES as often as we can is we receive state aid. That's basically the incentive that New York State asks school districts to consider, whether it's back office functions or supplier equipment or even educational programs, to use BOCES as a hub for those opportunities. And that's actually how we met at Elements. And that was one of the priorities at the time, to make sure that they had a relationship with BOCES so that we could pay a fraction of the cost.
Should we share? We should just share that cost, right? Can we just share what that cost is to the district for this year, next?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Joe and I discussed this a couple of weeks ago because there was not a substantial budget this year for this cost. The cost is $120,000 before state aid, before BOCES aid. So what I discussed with my counterpart in BOCES is that this year we are going to be paying around $20,000 for this cost, and the other $100,000 will come next year. Like that, we will be able to vote with the budget for next year. So the question that you asked me this afternoon about the Board of Education budget for next week, for next year. That's why I said it's going to be substantially more than this year because of these $100,000 that will incur next year.
Okay.
However, so our friends are not upset that they are only getting $20,000 between now and June. BOCES is going to front the money on a monthly basis. So what we're going to be doing is owing money to BOCES so we can continue paying our friends on a monthly basis, but they are going to charge us $100,000 of the $120,000 next year.
I thought I saw that it was $225,000. Am I
Well, we're talking state aid and the out of pocket.
without seeing it?
State aid, our state aid ratio is 40 and 60.
40 and 60.
Okay.
So by having it be a BOCES service, we receive various state aid based on the service, tuition, staff development, some people we purchase through BOCES, and the state has a different calculation for. what
So
the
they
reimbursement
charged us $225,000, but with state aid, we're only paying $120,000.
We'll have to look at the particulars between the 40 and 60. And our state aid's going up. One of the, I guess, intended
No, but this is BOCES.
benefits of
This is BOCES. BOCES. We're fighting with other districts, but we want to be friendly with the other districts. So if we go up, someone has to go down. So the BOCES rate won't move that much. But again, between 40 and 60%, I don't know in which of the 40 to 60 this falls in. But to make it simple, if it's 50% and it's 220, 110 will come back to us. We'll have to pay it, but will come back to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
will- we will see our education elements friends again. We're going to have them coming back regularly throughout the school year to provide updates for our board and community as well.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right, now we are going to move on to our superintendent's report.
Yes, we have a whole lot of information to share with you, financial information that has been requested by the board as we transition or work into our first year of our Princeton plan. So this isn't the polished presentation we normally would provide, but wanted to start with the first blush of information. We know that there are probably many more questions than what this document answers, but wanted to use a piece of our superintendent's report to field any additional questions, ask any clarifying questions. We could certainly come back and have a more formal report, but Enrique can walk us through some of these cost centers. They're in 3 areas. They're around teaching assistants, around elementary transportation, and calculations of the reduction in salaries with regards to the Princeton plan.
Good evening, everyone. The board asked us a couple of in the last board meeting to bring the financial overview for the Princeton plan. So both the board and the community get a handle of the cost and the savings for the Princeton plan. So that's what we're going to try to do tonight. We're going to start with teaching assistants. And the reason why teaching assistants are important is because there was an increasing number of teaching assistants from 2 years ago to this year. If you can see at the beginning of last year, we had 67 teaching assistants. However, during the year, Margaret, Lisa, and Joe believed that there was a need for more teaching assistants because coming out of COVID, it was important for the kids to have more support in the classrooms. So we agreed that we were going to add 9 additional teaching assistants for a 1-year assignment. So that brought the total to 76. During the January-April time, that is when we prepared the budget, we agreed that this was going to be a 1-year assignment for the teaching assistant, so that I should budget only for 67 teaching assistants. After the budget in the April-May period, the board approved an additional 5 teaching assistants for first grade classrooms for this year. And at the same time, there was a lot of discussion if we should have a pre-K program here or not. And at that time, around April, May, also the board agreed that we should have a pre-K program here. During the discussions, the idea was 2 of the teaching assistants that we already had, and there was no need to have them in other areas, will go with the teachers to the pre-K class. So in June of 2022, we finished the year with 76 teaching assistants, the original 67, plus the 9 teaching assistants that we needed to help the children come out of COVID. I'm sorry, these are a lot of numbers, and but we're talking finance, and finance is only numbers. So if anyone in the board has any questions, please stop me because it's a lot of movement.
I do. Your teacher assistants that you hired to address learning loss for COVID, did that come out of ESSER funding?
From us. Everything comes out of us.
So we didn't use the ESSER monies for that?
No.
No.
And was the teaching assistants for UPK, was that, I don't remember them being part of the UPK presentation that I was here for in the audience?
Yes.
Well, what was said at the UPK presentation, why I wasn't in this seat, was that we didn't need them for where they were used. So we're going to take them from the existing budget and bring them over to UPK.
Yeah.
I have a whole bunch of questions
Okay.
also about that. I'm with you. I went back and watched some of the video. So when we did the UPK budget, we based it on the cost of hiring 2 new entry-level teachers at that $80,000 number and taking 2 existing TAs that were already in our budget and using them as well. But we can look at that when we go next, because it seems we've added a lot more than we expected.
Stephanie, also, if you see what I said is to be taken from other assignments.
Okay.
So, because the idea was that 2 teaching assistants were coming from other assignments that we might not need in 2022, 23 that we needed in the prior year.
But
And we needed more.
I just want to be clear, but this is the whole school district, not just elementary. No.
No, I'm sorry, this is.
It's
The 76
This
is
is-
the whole district.
Okay.
What
Yeah,
we're talking
no,
about
no.
is.
Last year is
Yeah.
K to 12, this year is pre-K to 12.
okay. That's why I wanted to make sure because it just
Yes.
be very clear looking at
Okay.
it.
That helps.
Well, that, one of the things that I think we could also use is finding out where each of these TAs are relative to the building, as compared to last year. So it would be helpful. I think we've asked for that. So I'd like to see that by the next meeting, maybe to get a breakdown of where each of the TAs are at a building level. How many were in the high school last year versus this year, middle school, and then elementary. We can just identify the 3 elementaries on a building by building. And we can sort of just put an asterisk next to the two UPK since those are two additional classes that weren't part of last year's count.
We also need to see, speaking in terms of this long term, and when we get to the final number here, which ones are PPS tied to IEPs that the principals can't touch throughout the day to get coverage, right? And then we need to see how many TAs we have and do we have enough coverage currently for the general education population with the number we have from kindergarten through 12th grade.
I'll write the questions down for you and send them back.
Sorry, because it's all kind of missing from here. So
Thank you.
it's a big picture thing.
So,
Wait, Enrique, one more thing. I know everyone has a lot of questions and I do too, but when we did this together, like in leadership, we reviewed some of this, it was really helpful to do the teaching assistant section and then ask questions because he may have it answered as he goes.
Okay.
So let's do it in blocks.
yeah,
Go with your teaching assistants and then everybody.
then we talk at the end of teaching assistants.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have it all, it's like going through the motions with Enrique.
So starting this year, we started with, as of 10/28, the payroll, we had 84 teaching assistants. That's 17 additional teaching assistants at a cost of $800,000 to round up the number. Why did we have that many more? Well, the Board of Education approved 5 teaching assistants for first grade. Then we had 2 for tuition students that came with their IEPs from other districts. So that's not a cost for us. We need to hire them. We need to give them the teaching assistants, but then we charge the total cost of the teaching assistant to the other district. And then we needed 2 additional teaching assistants for ICT classes in 2nd and 5th grade. So for the 2 tuition student assistants, that cost is $91,000 that we charge the other 2 districts. And then for the 5 teaching assistants in first grade is $227,000. And the 2 teaching assistants for the ICT class again is $91,000. Then we have 5 elementary teaching assistants that double as building-based substitutes due to job shortage, what we call permanent per diem. So the idea here is that we don't have, no one is interested in coming for the day like we used to do. A teacher is sick, we call, the teacher calls, I'm sick, and I don't know how, but through the system, they call another teaching, another person to come and be the teaching assistant for the teaching assistant for the day. And then we also had 3 elementary teaching assistants hired to combat high turnover experience to minimize disruption. Next one, please. So the total additional cost for the TAs, for the 9 TAs, 17 TAs, I'm sorry, is $804,000. We subtract $91,000 from other schools that are paying. That brings us down to $713. Then we deduct the ICT, the mandated, that brings us to an amount of over budget, meaning that we didn't budget for close to $400,000. What Joe and Margaret told me is that I can take the money that we used in the past and that I budgeted for substitute teachers, that it's around $140,000. And that brings us to an over budget of basically $250,000. So that's the timetable of how we got to where we are today. So, any questions? Because it took us a while just to be able to explain this among the three of us. So now for you to seeing it for the first time, I'm sure you have a lot of questions and I'm going to try to answer them.
The budget line, you have 140,000 for subs.
Yes.
Is that your whole budget line for substitutes?
No, that's for the elementary schools.
That's just for the elementary.
And I'm glad you asked that. The middle school and the high school have exactly the same number of teaching assistants as last year. So the big changes were in the elementary schools.
Okay, and I just don't, when it says 3 elementary TAs hired to combat high turnover, experience to minimize, what is that high turnover?
I can take, so that was something we talked about last year. That we were having a hard time finding TAs, that there was a lot of turnover, that it's a very competitive job market for them. So their contract has since been renegotiated. So I think that's helping to keep TAs with us right now. But we were experiencing what we were seeing last year is that as soon as we would approve a TA, they were quitting because they found a job that was
paying more money
at another district. So the board greenlighted over hiring, anticipating turnover, which I'm happy to hear isn't happening like it was last year.
Stephanie, so you know, last year we settled the teacher assistant teacher aide contract with substantial increases so we can, stop this big turnover or hoping.
But we're not quite there because even as of today, we have 4 vacant TA positions.
And your 5 that are at the elementary school that double as substitutes, are they substituting all the time?
So what we have is we have permanent per diem subs at all 5 of our schools. It's basically principal's ability to hire a substitute teacher to hire.
I know what that is.
Okay. Across the 3 elementary schools, at each elementary school, we had identified 2 in each building. Middle school gets 3, high school gets 3. Right now at the elementary school, we have one of 6 positions. Because like TAs and like many other positions, we weren't able to recruit to retain them because other districts were basically upbidding, overbidding. We had people who would start with us and in fact the board would approve and then 2 weeks later would approve their resignation because they got, as Enrique said, a better job. So they never stepped foot with us in our district. So what we did was after doing the math of comparing the cost of a permanent per diem versus a teaching assistant, it's a more lucrative position for an individual to be a teaching assistant than just show up and make $125 every day.
Because they get benefits and stuff.
Right. But isn't that
So
more expensive to us?
It is, but at the risk of, that's really the conversation. It's that the alternative is what? The alternative is to not have any of those staff and to really be against the wall in terms of not having children being supervised when we need subs. So what those 5 individuals do, they don't sit around waiting for work. They're assigned, to different grade levels or to help out or break down reading groups or math instruction, you name it. But if and when someone wakes up at 6 a.m. and says, "Oh, I don't feel well," those are some by priority area, the first ones that are called to substitute.
Okay.
They're asked to substitute within the building.
And I was just wondering how many times they get utilized as subs versus being just TAs.
Depends on how many times the teacher.
Yeah.
And that's the only time they get pulled to cover is if the teacher is absent.
How often is it? That's what she's asking.
That's what I'm asking.
That's the question. We should. How else did we keep track of the budget of 140? Right, Enrique, can we make sure, please, that we're tracking that 140? I think we should go backwards to the first day of school. But the other concerning piece, before I even get into my questions, is I just heard we have 4 more TA positions to fill, which means 17 isn't a turnover, which means the 3 that we hired for a lack of slippage is not really a lack of slippage, it's a need. We have 4 more to hire. So this number actually needs to go up by another $365,000. Joe just said we have four, yeah.
Yeah, I think there are openings of people that have left us for more paying positions, is what Joe is saying.
But we've hired net 17 and we have 4 more to hire.
No, we
No.
hired net 17, and of those 17, 4 are
But it's
vacant.
still what he's saying, if
No,
those four.
Still 4 more. There's 17 more positions than we had at the close of school last year. Yes?
Yes.
Correct.
We're on the same page. As of right now, those are filled positions of 17 additional humans that are receiving a paycheck from the district. Yes?
Correct.
Okay. We have 4 more positions to fill. Yes?
No, of those 17 additional,
13 or 12.
that 4 of them left.
That's what I think.
But what I see that as is those are needed people. We need
Yeah.
them. So we can't say that we have extras.
Right.
Because of turnover, we need them.
We have 3 extras.
Of which 2 are, I believe, special education and tied to
Mandated.
students' IEPs.
And we're finding, and I don't have a mic, so I'm sorry, but we're finding that as soon as we hire someone, they can go down county and make about $15,000 to $20,000 more than we pay. It becomes a very hard market to hire. I've been trying to hire, and I think I have 4. I have 2 different postings with 4 people that applied, and of the 4, I've scheduled 3 interviews. Nobody showed. So that's where we're really running into it, is the monetary piece of it. You know, if we can get a certified teacher to come, that's great, because eventually they might get a position or a long-term position. And that's a step in the door, a foot in the door, right? I have teachers who are going for certifications that come as TAs, and we can give them student teaching within that section, and they don't have to take off. So that's a bonus, right? So we have that piece, but as soon as they get certified, if we don't have a position teaching wise, they go and find something in other districts. I mean, Education Weekly today was just saying how special ed is just decimated across the country. So it's very difficult, and it's a competitive market, especially for some of the harder classrooms to fill, which would be your ABC classes, or anybody one-to-one that has to maybe do toileting or really do a lot of basic stuff with kids. It's a hard job. And you're finding that more and more people will go down county and find a different type of job and get paid more.
We had a discussion last year even about those per diem building subs, about whether or not we needed to make them step 1 classroom teachers, you know, at a salary of in the range of 65 to 70,000, because no one wants to do that work.
I have one other point that I just wanted to bring. I am struggling a little bit with the 5 first grade hires. And it goes back to my earlier point. We took 2 TAs from first grade and gave them to UPK as already budgeted, so that we didn't impact the UPK budget. But then we needed to hire 5 more, but we took them because we said we already had those positions filled and we didn't need to accrue additional cost or incur additional costs in order to fill those. So I'd like to I think the appropriate way to look at what's needed if we're putting UPK on a shelf is that those 5 are not being filled. It was really net 3 being filled, which makes this $254,000 number a little closer to 345. Because if you take the 227, 122 divided it by 5 times it by 3, you get 136, 273 as the replacement cost for 3 TAs, which increases the net cost by 342, 345, 736, about 90 grand more than the anticipated cost should be on this. Thank you.
Well, sorry.
I actually only remember approving 3 additional TAs for first grade, not 5. So that's kind of concerning. I also am wondering, the tuition-based students, are they, when you say they're paying for their TAs, is it part of their tuition or on top of their tuition?
No, the way we invoice is tuition plus extras like OT, PT, and everything.
That makes me feel better.
TA, and the TA, again, the full amount. And in that particular case, I don't take average, I don't take anything for Gini TA, her salary X, she's health insurance, whatever, total. So in that sense, we're very, very careful. I work very carefully with Lisa for Lisa to tell me Johnny Tocampico or Johnny Mayopac or whatever the school district is called, that person is coming, who is the exact teaching assistant, so I can charge the exact amount.
Got it. And then are the 5 elementary TAs that Double is building based substitutes? Can they only substitute in elementary school or can they also substitute in middle school and high school?
That's a very, very good question.
They stay in their buildings.
Why?
Well, sometimes it's because that's what they've requested. So when we hire, we do ask them, it also depends on certification issues. Do you prefer to be elementary or secondary? And they will tell us.
But to sub?
Yeah.
You don't need to, if they're subbing.
But we do ask them what their preference is. And there are people who will say to us, I only want secondary. Don't call me if you have an elementary opening, and vice versa. I actually heard that when I used to sub 1,000 years ago. I just want to address one thing that Jen said a few seconds ago. So the number of TAs assigned to first grade is based on the number of sections we have in first grade. So last year, when the board said, please give every first grade teacher a teaching assistant, at the time, Cindy had 4 teaching assistants lined up. She needed to go to 9. So that's how we got
Right, but
the extra.
what's the rule for TAs at that age? No rule at all?
No,
No.
You don't have to have a TA in kindergarten. There is no rule. The only rule actually is UPK.
We agreed to do it,
Well,
but
yeah, because
we
they're
agreed
blind.
based on,
All
I agreed, or I thought I was agreeing based on 3. I don't remember anyone saying, hey, 3 became 5 because we have more sections.
No, I think 3 became 5 because they took 2 for UPK. And the explanation during the UPK presentation was they're already in our budget, so they won't impact it. The UPK grant so that it could be a net neutral UPK. They also used entry-level teachers.
I
Right.
hear what you're saying. I'm not sure if that's right or not. I guess that's Margaret. That's really Margaret. So do we have more sections than we originally had, or did we
always
not
knew.
account?
Sorry.
That's okay.
We always knew that we had 9. I mean, that was not a secret. We talked about FTE throughout the process and how many sections we were going to have. In a sense, the 2 teaching assistants that Jeremy is speaking of for UPK, if we did not do UPK, we would have had to cut 2 kindergarten teachers. They likely would have gone to a position that did not require a teaching assistant. So yes, those 2 TAs may have been placed somewhere else. But we chose not to do that. And in opening UPK, one of the requirements from the state is that there be a teaching assistant for 17 students. If you go over by 1, you need 2 TAs. So we capped it at the cap, and we have 1 in each.
And this is the same thing for our offsite UPK sites,
They have the
correct?
same requirements, yes.
I think I would like to throw in that a good follow-up might be knowing how many TAs we have in each school. And I
did
agree.
read that.
Okay.
You asked that, right?
Yeah.
It's on the list. The other thing, I just want to point out that, so there sounds like we have 2 issues here. One is that, I just want to state this, you tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like we have a couple of different issues. One is, it's very hard to get TAs, right? Specifically, special ed TAs. And those are also tied to IEPs. So that's one issue. We would have a similar issue whether we were in Princeton Plan or not.
Correct, yes.
The issue that we have currently is that we have a concentration of TAs at 1 building. We don't know how many are in the other 2 buildings that the principals have access to. If they're in a jam, can they take from the FGL to go to Furnace Woods or BV to help and fill? I'm asking, I don't know.
Do you want to leave the 5 and 6 year olds without assistance? That's
Well,
really.
this is where
There was no teacher.
this is one of the unintended consequences of a Princeton Plan model, right? This
So-
is the unintended consequence. We don't have the right coverage. We used to take from when we had a full building of K through 5, we had we had professional development or we had, absentees, with teachers out, one way or the other, we were able to take from a TA from another part of the building and just move them there.
And let me explain a little bit about the TA assignments. There's a formula that the district uses with the 3 elementary principals that goes back 8 years. And that formula was used over the summer. It is based on the number of sections that each school has, and then they get an additional, every 150 kids, there's another TA that's assigned to the school. So that has not changed. The only thing that changed was that we made a determination that the first grade should have a full-time TA, which is the only reason that FGL has the staffing that it has. In the past, when there have been emergencies, we have traded TAs, even with secondary. You know, we've sent people to the high school sent people to the middle school when we've had unique circumstances where we really needed coverage. So can that happen? Of course it can happen. No one's saying that it can't, but I don't want you to think that anyone got shortchanged in this process. We sat down and we applied the formula that we have always used, and they got what they would have gotten, whether we were non-Princeton plan or Princeton plan. It's based on the number of sections in the building.
I'm not sure that was the right, because if we didn't do this, we didn't magically get more kids to need 17 more this year.
And also.
You got to share it before.
Why we added people.
Right, but a lot of the coverage is because you could no longer share in a building when you had the ability before.
No. No, if I was still a K-5 building, then I might have, let's use BB as an example, 3 kindergartens. They would be the only people in the building who had a dedicated TA, but then I still would have the TA number I was rationed based on the number of sections that I have in my building.
But you had the ability to share. This is why, and it's okay, we'll get for this for the next meeting. I've been asking for a period of time and haven't received it to date. Last year's breakdown of TAs per building and this year's breakdown and the classes.
We absolutely have that, and we have that tied to the position that they hold.
I look forward to receiving it. Thank you so much.
The TAs, do they get additional pay when they sub class? Is that in this? Like you have 5 positions here, but they do get additional pay, which I would think that they'd want us to be shared in a building because they would make more that day. Is that cost in here when they get the additional pay?
No, because I wouldn't know how many.
Right, but it's still there.
Oh, yeah, and actually, so you know, our last contract, it used to be by hour up to 5 hours, and they negotiated now for the 7 hours.
Any TA I've ever encountered, and I have family members that are TA, they jump at the ability to double class because they need money.
Obviously, because probably, you know, they have a little bit more work to do, no question about it. But they make 50 to 60% more that particular day. Yes.
But that was happening Princeton plan or not, TA or not, because
that's just normal school.
Exactly, because you need a teacher, right?
Right.
And if we're down subs and we can't get subs, then that's how we make sure our kids are still getting instruction.
And
that happens.
That's how TAs who don't really make a lot of money get to make a little bit of money.
Exactly.
We just need to quantify that.
Yeah, that should be in there. Okay.
I totally agree with you, but the question is, whatever number I put there, someone can say it's too low, it's too high.
Yeah.
So I was trying to, you know, these are actual costs plus. I totally agree. There has to be a plus. What's the plus number?
I get it.
We could try to do that from last year and say, why is this year going to be any different than last year, 2019, 2018, and then say, okay, you know, in those years, you know, we spent over $140,000 in substitute teachers that now we're paying the teaching assistants. But without any doubt, I would say, yeah, we're talking these $140,000 that we're using from substitute teachers. are going to pay the teaching assistants that are jumping. I prefer to be a teacher today.
Right.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
The 140, that meant the 140 amount that's allotted for substitutes, is that the 6 permanent subs? Is that what the 6 permanent subs that Joe was speaking about? Is that what that
It's
dollar?
part of it, and the other part is the typically we were able to get the 1 day permanent. Anything that is a substitute teacher
So
comes out of this account, these 3 accounts.
Joe had alluded to, we only have one of those 6 positions filled. So is there a savings there that we're not? Is there some other net in here that we're not accounting for?
No, because that's part of the 104.
Okay, so that 140 is the 6 subs. The 6 permanent subs that we have for elementary school. That's what that 140 is supposed to represent. Or within that
Yes,
140.
either permanent subs or 1 day subs.
Okay.
That's where we get
That's
that
what
money for the permanent subs, yes.
I don't have it in front of me. How many first grade sections were there last year in the 3 buildings combined? Do you remember?
It was 9.
There was 9.
I don't know, I gotta look, but I don't.
9 this year.
More.
I'm trying to think, there were 2 with Furnace Woods. I think there might have been 4 at Frank G, so that's 6, and 2 at BV.
7.
First,
8.
8. So and last year, every first grade class had a.
No.
No, they had part-time. Frank G had they were utilized.
But
they
that's
were
how
utilized.
maybe your principal
Wait.
needs them, but you didn't have. Right.
not, the answer is 9.
So we have the
Last year was
same
9.
number
We had the same.
of sections this year versus last year.
Full-time TAs until this year.
Did they have classroom instruction time where so here's the question that I'm asking, right? My understanding was each classroom last year when the class was being taught had a TA in first grade.
No.
Yes, they did. No, yes, they did. We went and asked the principals. We did.
All of the
Even though
first
it's
grade
not
shared the
actually
building.
documented.
That's how they chose to use.
Right,
That's how they
that
chose
way.
But,
to
okay,
use.
so
To our decision.
So hear me out. To the point that was raised, as a result of banding, we had to hire more to give the same first grade experience
Correct.
as they had previously.
Absolutely.
That's exactly where I was trying to get.
I disagree. I disagree. But what happened was our model for a long time, even before the 8 years of the calculation was, we had assigned a TA to kindergarten. Then additional TAs were assigned to schools based on sections and given different weight for younger kids versus older kids. Principals had discretion to move their TAs around by grade level or by teacher based on need, based on their own criteria. 3 different schools with 3 different DNA and makeup and who knew, whatever it is. For this year's first grade at school ABC is harder than first grade at XYZ, or class size was bigger. That was an issue. Class size was bigger at one school than the other school. So those principals outside of kindergarten, which this organization says every kindergarten classroom gets a TA, the rest of them were principal discretion. Sometimes they moved around during the year, but one school, they had a TA dedicated to first grade, which meant a greater allotment of those TAs were in first grade and not other places.
Sounds like
We got the answer last year.
It sounds like Jenny saying we had it on all 3
You
schools.
spoke with the principals.
Not in
And
all 3 schools,
also,
though.
if you did,
Yes.
part of the reason why we were very passionate about it was because it was the experience that they were receiving. We didn't want to change that. And with Princeton Plan, we're putting these little 6-year-olds on the top floor and they don't have bathrooms in the classrooms. And their whole COVID I mean, there was a million things that factored into it, but the number one reason was that we found out that that's how they were being utilized. It wasn't a rule. It wasn't the law of the district. It was just how they were being utilized. And we wanted to make sure that we held to that. I heard from community members, teachers, staff members, that was really important and that's why we advocated for it. Because I really don't believe that we would have rolled out Princeton plan with 9 first grade classes and 4 TAs.
So then
On the second floor of the building, having that.
So I'll tell you, I have an even harder time then, including this $136,000 for TA expense as an acceptable allotment that doesn't count against the Princeton plan savings, because we did not give the same experience without this. So as a result, I'm going to revise my numbers additionally to make my 345 that I come up with saying we only hired 3 to really go back to another 136,273 on top of it. Which is, by the way, almost $500,000.
I'm gonna go back to piggyback on something Jen started with and with the added we're having a hard time retaining TAs, right? And keeping them. We're taking kids from out of district, they're tied to TAs. So I don't know, is it benefit there long-term? This is something that probably needs to be discussed and answered later, to bring in students when we can't even hire staff to cover our own population. Especially if they keep leaving, which is a fundamental issue, clearly we have, and that apparently costs most of the state is probably having a similar issue. And I don't know, I'm struggling to understand. I think, so we have this many at Frank G. How many do we actually have that the principals have access to at Furnace Woods and BV? Do they have access to 4 based on their population? Do they have access to 8 based on their population? Because at the end of the day, when this is all said and done, we have to make sure that we are providing a good experience for these students and the staff, right? So at the end of the day, take money out of the equation. That's our job. That's our role. So is that happening? And do Donna and Josh have and for that matter, middle school and high school, have enough coverage and enough TAs or a similar amount for their programming? Do they have that? Is that there right now?
They have what they should have based on the formula that we use. So I think there are scheduled to be 8 in BV and 8 in Furnace Woods. I think right now they have that. They might even have 1 more than that. That's just gen ed. That's not special ed.
And how about the middle school? That sounds like a lot.
Middle school really doesn't use teaching assistants. They have 1 teaching assistant who mans the library, and they have another teaching assistant that works in the phys ed program. It's not the same at secondary as it is at elementary.
Right, but so I guess that's a whole other conversation, is do they have the right amount of coverage when they have absenteeism among staff? But I think that's another conversation to have. Let's just, this is enough to cover.
Middle school also has 2 permanent per diem subs.
Okay. So right now, as of this, at this moment, Donna has 8 TAs she has access to, and Josh has 8 TAs that he has access to.
Yes.
Not PPS, that is.
No,
Totally
that's not
different.
sped.
Yeah,
That's
totally different.
That's
Now,
another
they
line.
and each of those principals assigns those teaching assistants as they see fit in their school. Some of them are, there may be a teacher who has a TA for 2 hours. There may be a teacher who has a TA for half a day. There may be a teacher who has one the full day.
Yeah, well, it's based on need and what they know is needed in their,
But they
need in their
are
building.
for teacher absences as well. So right now, I think we approved 1 tonight, didn't we? There means there are 2 outside subs for elementary.
Okay.
And then I have to go to a TA and I'm a building principal.
Enrique, can you just, because in my building, teachers get first dibs on subbing. So I would get money to sub a period when a colleague is out. Is that how it works here or?
Yeah. Not have that agreement.
Okay. It might help your sub.
Did we think about adding it? Sign a release?
Next time
We talked about it,
You're not paying benefits on top of that.
but we probably can't talk about it here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, is everybody good on their questions for teaching assistants, or is there anything else that we need to ask?
Nope.
All right, Enrique, floor is yours.
Okay. Let's go to transportation. a little bit more exciting because this has to do with something else besides wellness, so at least we can discuss something else. So transportation, what I ask please is to give me the actual miles driven by all our K to 12 buses this year and last year for the first 27 days of school, so we can compare apples to apples. Last year, it was 17,800. This year is 31,400.
Wow.
Then, again, so this can tie only to Princeton plan. We took out the athletic runs, the field trips, everything. So from last year, the total number of miles driven, basically to take the K-12 students from home to school and from back home, was 15,300, and this year it's been 28,600. So next one, please. So the difference for the first 27 days of school is 13.2 thousand miles. Let's go to the average cost per mile. For fuel, parts, and maintenance, my head mechanic took the new buses and the old buses, and obviously the old buses will cost more. Then depreciation is the same for every bus because every bus costs around $165,000, and we run it for 100,000 miles. So it's about $1.65 per mile in depreciation. So the old buses cost about $4, the new buses $2.88. So I took the average because we have 10-year-old buses, 9, 8 to 0. So the average is the average. So that's 3.45 cost per mile per bus. If we take into account that for 27 days, we drove 13,000 miles more for 180 days, that number would be 88,000. Yes.
How many miles can your buses drive before you have to retire them?
100,000.
Oh my gosh.
So
And how much does a new bus cost?
165,000.
that's why it's $1.65.
That's why it's 1.65, the cost per mile of depreciation, meaning the cost per mile for buying that bus is $1.65, because if you multiply that by 100,000, that's the cost of the bus, 165,000.
I thought we were supposed to save money with transportation.
And let's continue on.
Okay, I'm not going to stop that.
So if the additional number of miles that we're going to be running during the year is 88,000, we multiply that number for the 3.45 cost per mile, the total additional cost will be $305,000. Less state aid, and the state aid can go between 30,000 and 150,000. What the consultant until a couple of weeks ago told us is that the 150,000, he's taking into account that our wealth ratio is going to increase to 30%. So really the real number is the 30,000 or maybe a little bit more. So the cost to the district, the direct cost to the district will be around 155 to 275,000 more than without Princeton plan. So next one. The board also asked me to check on the carbon footprint. The carbon CO2 equivalent in metric tons per mile is 0.0015. we multiply that by the 88,000 miles, that's equal to 13.7 metric tons of carbon footprint. And my first question when my head mechanic gave me this is that a little bit? Is this a lot? You know? So I went to the internet to find out an equivalent. And the equivalent is like using 344 million plastic straws. So everyone can have an idea what does that mean, because for me, 13.6 metric tons don't mean anything until someone tells me what does that mean.
I remember when Liz was here, she said that and I might be wrong about this, that the average kids, butts on the seats in the buses for elementary school, there's 32. So we're increasing our carbon footprint, but we're decreasing the number of kids that are actually utilizing the buses to be transported to school.
Which?
They still have to take the route, right? They still have to take the route, but
The unintended
it's
consequence.
an unintended consequence. I mean, everyone's talking about.
Stephanie, honestly, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how many kids we're transporting on a daily basis this year compared to last year. This is what I can do, and again, it's going to be very difficult because if you remember, we had a conversation of how do we know how many kids are in the bus for the miles. And the answer, I don't know if it's all the board or just a couple of people in the board, is that please takes a sample of 3 different days and average those 3 different days. So we can do the same this year, or when she takes a sample, do the same and say, okay, last year we transported, in these 3 particular days, X number of students last year, and this year, this X number of students. And then we compare it. Obviously, if it's very close by, we can say, okay, really, everyone who took the bus last year is taking the bus this year. Or there's a difference because parents do not want their kids to be 35 minutes on the bus or 30 or whatever. But that's a very good question. And that's a question that I can ask Liz to pick 3 days in the next month and a half. Obviously, we will never pick a day during the Thanksgiving week, during the week before Christmas, a day like next week where there's no holidays, it's a regular week of school, and we can do it. And then we can, if that's what the board wants to do, we can do that, yes. Because we're doing it, by the way. It's not like we're going to do it just for you.
Right.
We're already doing it. It's just asking Liz, well, we would like you to do it between maybe last year they did it, she did it in October, November, and March. Well, now do it in October, November, and December. So, but the short answer is today, I don't know if we're transporting more or less kids than last year.
I have a quick question. Do we have more bus runs than we had last year? Have we added bus runs? I think.
Actually, we have, my understanding is that we have exactly the same because we reduced 2 from the middle school. That's why, I'm sorry.
4 from the middle school. It's 4.
That's why Therese is here. We reduced 2 from the middle school.
4, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 4.
Yes.
And we added 2
The elementary.
to the elementary. So if that's the case, and I will have to ask Liz, this is just by,
Okay, thank you.
yes. So if I'm correct, we're running 2 less routes this year.
And this, just to be clear, this is just our bigger buses? This is not including the van run?
Again, K to 12. Taking kids home to school and back. We're not taking into account the kids how many kids this year we take to BOCES, to the occupational, the small buses, nothing, are routes to bring kids to school, the big buses, and to bring them back.
Okay, hold on, 1 second.
Sure, so.
Okay, I'm a pretty plugged in parent and I'm involved in all these committees that we've had here for the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years. I've been on almost everyone. Everyone keeps talking about this consultant report. What is the consultant report that was utilized and used to make the decisions that were made to get us where we are today? And how did we miss all of this? This is a two-pronged question and this probably needs a follow-up. But obviously there were I'm feeling like there was conversations had previously that were had somewhere else that wasn't this board table, because we're talking about TA hirings and we're talking about busing and we're talking about, I don't remember it ever being discussed here. So if there's a consultant report that was used to get to us to where we are today to make this major, I mean, this CO2 alone is blowing my mind. But the fact that we really thought we were going to get $150,000 in state aid. Now we're saying we're only going to see around $30,000. Are we even going to get the $30,000 now if we don't have the ridership on the buses? And I'm going to also add here that we have invested a tremendous amount of money to be a more green community and a green school. We have windmills at Frank G. Lindsay. We have solar panels on our roofs to save us money and to be more green and more energy efficient. And this is complete the opposite of that. So we have to decide where we're going to move as a community and how are we going to offset this now? Because this is a huge impact and it doesn't even take into consideration the number of parents now who are driving their children to middle school and high school and the elementary school because they don't want their kids on buses for 35 and 45 minutes and we have them on packed buses. So I just wanted, this is a big statement I'm making here and I understand that and I probably you guys all wanted to say something similar and I'm sorry, but I think we really have to figure out what our goal is as a community and going forward, how we're going to address this, money aside, how we're going to address this as a district.
And if we're taking advice from consultants, are they giving us the best advice?
Where is this? And where is this report? Where is this report? Everyone keeps bringing it up. This is the elephant in the room. It keeps getting brought up over and over and over. I have heard about this consultant over and over again, and I have been on every committee that we've had, and I have never seen it. Where is it? I'm a board member now. I want to see it. That's it. I'm done.
The one thing I can do if the board wants is I can ask Liz to come to the next board meeting and explain everything. And
We have been asking for this.
It's got to go on board doc.
Oh,
Whatever it is, go on board doc so everybody can see it.
I'm not getting any answers. I can't even hear a meeting now.
Community needs to see this now.
I will ask Liz tomorrow if there is a written report, put it in the website to give it to if needed is on vacation, to give it to whoever is in charge.
If it's in email form, maybe if he gave a synopsis of his work in an email form, I'm sure we didn't hire a consultant and have zero tangible information,
There has to be something.
right, to rely on. I know this would not be normal, right? So if we could just figure that piece out.
I'll talk to Liz tomorrow. Probably we'll give you an answer.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Enrique.
We'll give you an answer.
I have some questions about this information. So you just said something and I'm assuming it's related to something that you said a minute ago. I just want to kind of clarify this. So the 30,000 to the 150,000, you also mentioned a wealth ratio or so. So help me understand. What is the variation of this aid?
Okay.
Why does it vary?
He sent me an email that I will show everyone that I didn't understand. So I called him back and he said, I base for next year, his answer was for next year that you're still at the 10% at the wealth ratio that equates to 10%, you'll get $30,000. When your wealth ratio increases to 30%, you'll get $150,000.
Okay, so,
It could be.
but here's the other piece. The wealth ratio increase for transportation would happen whether we did this
Of course,
additional driving or not.
The wealth ratio has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that our assessed value will go down substantially.
So
because of the closing of Indian Port.
Okay, so
Nothing else matters. It
So we
doesn't matter.
spending $300,000 additional dollars on busing. We told the community that we were going to be net neutral because of additional state aid. We're finding out that that state aid represents, let's call it at best half of this additional 300,000. So we're already spending 50% more than well, let me go backwards. It's not 50% more. So we're actually going to spend at best net $155,000 more dollars. But if I'm hearing this right, the 120 is going to happen whether we spent the 300 or not, because it's based on our wealth ratio and the aid that we get back from the state. So really the only additional benefit is 30 grand, which means that the 155 has no impact on the 305 because the 305 was extra because of the new banding model. The 150 less 30 is 120, which we're getting because we are losing the Indian Point pilot. So net, we just spent $275,000 on busing when we were promised that we were net neutral. Is this right?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. So now we're $500,000 on TAs and we are on $275 for busing. I can't wait to get to this.
Sorry. From instead of 150, it's 120.
That's fine.
That's what I'm saying. I don't.
So
I get your point, but I just want to make it.
And then I have one more. Does this include, well, I want to call out that it likely doesn't include, I just want to make sure. Does this include the additional 2 buses that we've added to the elementary routes that we understood that we've added? Okay, so guys, just.
Sorry.
So there's more mileage that we haven't accounted for yet because we've added 2 new elementary routes that are not part of this information.
It is.
No.
Because- No.
It's not. He just said it. I asked
It
him.
was before the information that Liz gave me was without those 2 buses because it was.
So that's more at $3.45 a mile. It also doesn't account for the opportunity cost of those 2 drivers that we talked about last week are losing 2 hours a day in the building. It doesn't account for the loss of productivity of the existing custodial drivers who are not getting their same number of hours in building because the existing routes take longer. So this is all opportunity cost that's not quantified in these numbers. I just want to call out. And if we were to have to replace all those hours, it would then become at time and a half, right? So that would be an even bigger impact. And it also doesn't account for the bus monitors or whatever we're calling the role of the person who's going to potentially sit on a bus for the buses that need additional supervision. That is also not accounted for here. Okay, so the $275,000 number is a very generous additional expense when it sounds like it is a much bigger number in all actuality.
The one, what we were saying over here is that just to clarify, I think I want to make sure that we're clear, is we wouldn't have gotten any of the state aid if we hadn't moved to banding. So I just want to make that clear, I guess. Is that the case?
How state aid is calculated with transportation, Enrique? Can you give a quick overview? It's, we do not get reimbursement when we transport students within the state mandated walking area.
Which is 1 mile, So what the state calls it is anyone that we pick within the mile from the school, we don't get state aid.
Right.
So here, because, the child that lives in Hartford used to go to Franchi Lindsay, the state was not giving us state aid when he went to Franchilins. If that little kid now goes to any of the other two schools, it's more than 1 mile away. So now I'm getting state aid.
So of that, we
This is
qualify.
like Coles Cash.
Yeah, but
Other go,
if we don't
have money,
qualify,
you get it, but you have to spend more. We spent more, but we are getting state aid.
okay,
But I don't want the wealth ratio involved in the
that's separate.
determination. We need to figure out what is the additional aid because of this.
Yes.
And because the wealth ratio has no impact.
No impact.
So without the wealth ratio as the kicker, what would be the state aid that we anticipate? That's the 30 grand.
That's according to our.
The rest of it has to do with Indian Point closing down.
Okay, that's clear.
Get transportation questions. All right, moving on.
Not. So now, we need to discuss teachers, obviously, the biggest part of all these. And again, I like to make I always like, so to have a background idea of time that knows.
Thank you.
In December of last year, obviously, none of the teachers have told us if they were going to retire. We didn't know how many people were going to resign. And at that moment, we knew that there were 13 teachers that we can access because of the Princeton plan. And that brought us a minimum of $1.15 million. If we have 13 teachers, and those 13 teachers were the least senior teachers. If we have no retirements and no resignations, the least senior teachers would have cost us around $1.15 million, and that's including salary and benefits. So then, next please. Thank you. In January 2022, we still didn't have any knowledge of retirements, but we knew of four resignations. So the number that I have here on the resignations are the actual numbers. The number that I have on the reductions, I picked the 5 least teachers that if we have no retirements, we will be the ones that leave. That left us with a total savings of $850,000. Next one, please. Then we went to February. So in February, 3 teachers retired. Said, I'm retiring for next year. We still have the 4 resignations. And we had one teacher that said, I can't teach next year. I want a leave of absence. And 1 reduction. So we decided there's only going to be 1 reduction. So now I knew the salaries of every single retiree, resignation, everyone. And that brings us to $1.16 million. The total savings. In June of 2022, now we had 3 non-retirements, 4 resignations, and then the person who we were going to reduce, we didn't reduce her because she took the place of the leave of absence. So the total savings, instead of being 1.16, are 1.08. Because obviously, the leave of absence, just to make it very simple, her salary and benefits was 200,000, but because we needed to put someone in the classroom instead of her, and it was that person as a reduction, we knew that her total salary was 85. So really the difference between the full salary or the replacement cost is 1,083,000. Okay? So the savings, and here is the discussion that Alexandra, Alexis, Joe, and I had last week. What part of this is because of Princeton Plan, and what part of this is because your regular cycle where people retire? So, and that's why I at the end, if you see, I say savings due to PP, to Princeton Plan, or PP/retirement or and leave of absence. And that's a discussion for the board to have. But basically, we had 3 retirements at their salary plus benefits, 1 leave of absence, but all those were replaced by first-year teachers at $85,000. So the question here is the difference between using the retirement salary or using the retirement salary less the replacement cost, which one is the real savings from Princeton Plan? And that's the $356,000. That's the question that I'm asking you, which one you believe it is, because again, last week, 2 of us said this is due to a regular cycle. But Alexandra and Joe disagree with us. And I'm not saying I'm right and they are wrong, or I'm just saying it's up for discussion.
I kind of think it's misleading to say that it's a savings for Princeton Plan. This is a regular cycle every school year.
They weren't actually replaced. This is if they were replaced.
Yes,
To me, as just a community member, when I was here listening to the presentations, I saw them as you were going to reduce 14 teaching positions. So I thought that $1.5 million was because you were eliminating teacher positions.
Which we did by
Not by this, not by someone retiring and you're
Correct.
not going to replace them. That's not how it was presented to the community.
I disagree. As being part of those conversations, we always knew that we were going to take retirements off the top first.
So you knew that, but that's not what that presentation said. And I went to many Princeton Plan meetings and it was not presented like this. Because I'm a teacher, I would have said, how are you going to save for a retirement? Or, I mean, you would have to access a teacher.
The savings is the difference.
The savings
In
is the difference.
finance,
That's
that's
because
where
they
you
retire. 100%.
I mean, we could debate it every which way we want, but when you're talking financials and budgeting, the difference is the savings.
Now, it may be a budget to budget. Right, it's a budget to budget savings, right? But that's the budget to budget component here, and we'll acknowledge that that's important when we're determining what our future costs are. But when we're talking about the reason for implementing such as a massive program, it's intellectually dishonest to capture retirement savings at best, to capture retirement savings as the result of your grade banding model. The grade banding model eliminated positions. So if you're going to capture the retirement savings, you can only capture the component of those retirees or LOAs that you didn't replace. So it's a 2-piece savings. You're reducing $356,000 from your budget. No argument. But you're reducing that with or without Princeton Plan. Princeton Plan saved you, the reason that it's 356 is because you would be replacing those 4 without Princeton Plan at $85,000, right?
Correct, yes.
So therefore, $356,000 of that total savings of those 4 people who didn't come back, right? 356 gets to be applied to your grade banding model. So you net that from your 183,083,000 and you get 726,934. So your Princeton Plan model, based on the 8 positions that are no longer here, saved you less than $750,000 from 2 million revised to 1.1, which really is in line. If you look at it, Ally, if you go back to the slide that shows you the expected reduction, if we weren't going to have anybody retire, you would have had a slightly larger savings if you just took the 9. Well, because also first, we also only have 8, not 9, because one of the LOAs were replaced. That's why it's a net 8. But if you take that number, that 850 is a much more closer representation of your actual savings as a result of the cut. Now, if you take the least paid person out of that, which is line 6, right? That's probably 80-something thousand, and take that off of your 850 and you get right back to the 726 plus or minus a few $1,000. So the Princeton Plan savings was 726. The busing cost is somewhere between
3 to 5.
Yeah, right. I mean, so if we take the soft cost savings off the table, 726 is pretty much a non-arguable number for savings. If we take the busing additional expense of 305,000, take off the 30 grand, it's 275, right? Plus or minus, are we at 450? Okay. And then we take the TA conversation, which I'm going to argue we spent 480 on it. We net spent 30 grand as a result of this change. We saved 0. Maybe we can then say, well, we do get the wealth ratio and we are going to add all this in. So then I'll say, fine, we saved 100 grand. At absolute best, and that's only because of the increased wealth ratio kicker.
At the end, what does all this do to our budget?
Nothing.
Like, do we have any changes that we need to make? Do we have any cuts that we need to make to account for additional busing, additional TAs?
So far, let me try to explain how we do the budget in general. So every year, I have to, let's go back a little bit. Let me explain to you that this business is very different than your business or any of your business, because if tomorrow you bring more money, you can spend more. I can. Tomorrow, Janet, you can give us a grant of $100,000. For example, the issue of the 2 TAs that the other school districts are going to pay. It's not a cost to us, but that's $100,000 that because we didn't know that these 2 children were coming by the time we closed the budget, it's $100,000 that I might not be able to do X, even though it's not costing me.
Yes, I agree.
The community votes for the maximum amount of money that we can spend. It doesn't matter if tomorrow we get, like last year, we got an extra $2.7 million separate. Okay, we can only spend it here. But my budget tells me there's only $86 million. So I need to budget taking into account that potentially we can get sued, that potentially we need an extra teacher because, and then I go back the last 10 years, and in the last 10 years, every year there was one class that split. So I need to take that into account. So I take all these issues into account, and then we come to a budget and we say, this is the budget. And that is why you only see transfers of over $25,000. Any transfer below between 0 and 20,000, I signed it and transfer is done, 20 to 24,999. Joe signs it, and over that amount, the board knows. But we're constantly transferring money because we have extra expenses here, but I don't need them here. This year, definitely, I'm nervous. And I was telling the audit committee this afternoon that usually I don't start looking very carefully to how we're doing during the year until January. Now I'm going to start in 2 weeks because I'm a little bit nervous because we added, the board asked us to add a lot of stuff that cost a lot of money. For example, the board asked us for an SRO. That's about $170,000 that was not budgeted. Again, because $100,000 for the 2 teaching assistants in SPED, even though it's not a cost, but it's an extra expense that I need to see where I can save to pay for that.
I have a question that is tied to all this, I think tied to all this and sort of what you're saying. In the past, we had one school that received full Title I funding. Now we have 5 schools that look the same. How does this affect that funding going forward? And how much are we going to receive in Title I funds this year projected, knowing that we have 5 buildings?
Doesn't change, it's based on the children.
So based on where the children are?
Yes, but the funding doesn't change because the kids are the kids. If they're in this building or that building, it's based on the children.
So it's just
spread out
Yes,
differently.
Yes. So as you said, we used to have 1 Title I school and 4 targeted assistance schools. Now
So
we
they
have
got money
5
based on the
targeted
need.
assistants.
Did the targeted school get more funding because it was a targeted, because it was a school that had a higher number?
We had 4 targets, 1 Title I.
No, so the one Title I building, that was the one Title I building, did they get more money?
Yes.
Because they were a full Title I school?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. So do we know what that looks like now? The new number?
They're all targeted assistants. We don't have a title building anymore.
Right, so what do we lose?
We don't lose any money. The kids are spread out differently.
The kids are still here, so it's based on the kids that we have in districts.
It's based on the concentration.
It's not
of
based on
children.
a school.
So that other school didn't get any more money because they were Title I?
They
Only
did,
based on
we got Title I money based on us having a school. But now what they do is they spread it around because we still have those students. Those students didn't go anywhere. They're just spread out.
So per pupil allotment.
Right.
It's basically like a better
Yeah,
term,
so-
like a voucher.
So in the past, BV qualified for more programs
Yeah.
based on their Title I status, correct?
They got more money based on their Title I status.
they had
because
more-
they had the
more people there.
There's a greater concentration of children there based on their demographics.
Now those
So
kids
the
are.
question, if I'm not misunderstanding, the question is, if we have 2 schools, one that is Title I and the other one is
Targeted.
almost Title I. Do they give us more weight and therefore more money because one is Title I and the other one is not?
No,
That's my question. I
Okay.
think that's.
per pupil. So they look at your poverty level and there's a formula with which they assign dollars. So if we had 100 children last year and 90 of them were at BV, we still have those 100 children, but now they're spread across.
No, I understand that, but that's why I was asking. So it doesn't, not because the concentration is here, and then here you're Title I, and when you're at Title I school, instead of giving you $5 per student, they give you 10. No, it's the
just a
same
flat rate.
across. So just because the concentration was here and you put a lot more money here, it's considered Title I, but the other ones are not.
Okay.
Now it's equitable across every building.
Oh,
So, just, you made a statement that makes me a little not nervous, but a point worth paying attention to. You said you were watching your budget lines much closer now. Yeah. What is a reasonable time frame for you to maybe let the board know what line items in the budget are sort of raising a red flag because you budgeted X and you're now at X plus 5% or whatever the number is, right? If it's heating oil, obviously it's going to be higher later, right? But I'm guessing that you're accruing for it. But to that point, what monthly from once a month from this point forward, should you let us know what areas we are starting to go into deeper water that wasn't expected?
Sure,
Right, and that's how
I'm anyway, so you know what? I don't know how closely you look at the treasurer's report. The treasurer's report also has the budget, like the account codes for all of them, and they say, and it has original budget, changes on the budget, budget today, expended, and then available. And but I can do it on a monthly basis because again, for me, is whatever I'm looking at, instead of just looking at myself, I look myself and then I'll share it with you because I'm actually doing it. I can send it to you because it's a lot of, we have about 580 account codes. So we're talking a lot of, some of the account codes are $20, $30.
Well, I think, and I think if we're gonna have to cut something, right? If we're gonna have to modify something or change something, we would want to know.
Oh, yeah.
We want to know what that is, what that is.
What's causing us to have to make those choices?
Joe and I discussed that a couple of weeks ago that, knock on wood, we haven't had any lawsuits, we haven't had any big tax stories, anything like that. If we have a big one like that, either we'll have to ban for that, or in April, May, I would have to go to Joe or to the board and say, we need to cut a couple of teachers because we're not making it. And I'm not saying we're going to do it. I want to make it very clear because we're not there yet. We're not even close. But yeah, we are going to have to monitor this budget a lot closer than in past years because there's been several over budget account costs. But again, please, I don't want anyone to think that we're going to have to cut teachers in the middle of the year or anything like that. I'm just saying, or whatever, or transportation. I'm just saying the consequence, if we don't manage this budget this year correctly, can be that we're not there, not even close. As of today, last week, for all the salaries, that's what I looked more carefully, we were still way in the black. So you have to be, we are over $1 million in the black today. But I'm just saying, so I don't want tomorrow any teacher saying, getting nervous and starting looking for a job. No, we're still in the black.
No.
I just had a comment because Jeremy, you threw out the number 726, but we were talking about this building condition survey and we were going to outfit the schools now so they're age appropriate for the students that are attending them. We're considering it, but that should be part of the cost of the Princeton plan. And now I'm going to take my Board of Ed hat off, even though I'm up here. And I'm going to say that I am actually, as a taxpayer and a parent, I'm angry because out of all those meetings on April 19th, 2021, it was presented to the community that we were saving $2 million and there would be a 4.5% property tax avoidance. And now I'm looking at this number and I'm looking at what the buses look like. And I feel deceived and duped. That's exactly how I feel. And I'm sorry, but I don't even like feeling this way, but and if I feel that way, I don't even have a child in elementary school. So I can just imagine.
We were always told it was going to be a range up to 2 million based on if it was retirees, people who were at the max salary, that would be the positions that were eliminated through the Princeton plan. The $2 million was never a promise. That was the maximum range of the range that could have been saved.
I think you were told that in private, and it wasn't, that's not how it was presented.
That's not true. Let me do a walk, a history. Indian Point announces their closure in January of 2017. The board at that time wanted to commission a study to determine what to do or whether or not there were significant savings by reorganizing students. There were a number of options. One option was do nothing. One option was Princeton plan, and I forget how many options in between. But they included closing schools, moving 5th grade to the middle school, many different options.
Are you talking about your cost analysis reorganization from 2018 to 2019? Okay.
But that
Yes.
was, came out 2018, November of 2018.
And then it was shelved because of COVID, and in the 2020
No, it
November.
wasn't shelved. The board at the time actually.
Well, you were
reduced those
focused on COVID, yes, but then your focus was diverted because we were in an international pandemic and things turned upside down. I went back and watched these meetings.
Yeah, the board at the time went through that study during the pandemic to determine whether or not we were going to make any adjustments. The study at the time, don't quote me on it, but was around at that time $1 million of savings from the study from 2017 or 18. That included a number of teaching positions. And I believe because some of them were at kindergarten, that calculation also included a couple teaching assistant positions, because teaching assistant goes with kindergarten. Board goes through a process, don't want to close schools, doesn't want to close the school, doesn't have enough information. 5th grade going to the middle school, we're a little iffy about 5th graders being in the bus with 8th graders. Once you close the school, it's a very permanent decision, tough to reopen the school. We don't know what enrollment will look like. We had, as Ally said, we had always given a range of a number of positions at that time that could be reduced. There were 3 numbers in the range. If we had to lay off everybody, so it was around X number, I think it was 13 staff members, maybe 14, at a rate of first-year teacher, right? And in fact, I think it was more specific. We took the actual lowest salaries, benefits, so on and so forth, as Enrique did, of those 13 or 14 teachers. The opposite end of the spectrum was, no offense to those who have retired or are contemplating it, we got lucky and all 13 retired or 14 retired, what that cost would be. And you can see sort of the difference from what Enrique shared. And then what we had communicated was something in the middle, either the average salary of our teachers at that time or the difference between the low number and the high number. There was always a range. There was never a guarantee. What the board at the time wanted to do was to equate that number of potential salary savings to tax avoidance. So it very well could have been at the time, whatever 2 million was, is probably
It's
4.5% at that time based on our
The original presentation in 2018 went up to 2.4 million.
Right.
The original. I think that was a 2018 or 2019 presentation that we received at PTA
The presentation
meetings.
I watched was on April 19th, 2021. And it was a parent forum, and it said 2 million and a 4.5% property tax avoidance. And the April 7th Board of Ed meeting,
That was when it was voted on.
when it was voted on, it was all like, that 2 million was not far from what the board was thinking that you're gonna save. And I know you're saying it was projected, but the way it was presented to the community, your projections were misleading.
They captured
You're
they captured the highest paid people in the district that are retiring
It's never
and not the
hidden. It was
replacement.
never hidden in fact. It was always out there. It was always out there.
Can you
I'll
with
go
all
back,
due
I'll watch
respect-
movies, I will watch
Yeah.
videos all day tomorrow. I'll find it.
I'm
It was
gonna,
never called out that it would be a retirement savings and it was that it was always capturing with the answers when I asked these questions. So, you know, some of them were not always at a board meeting, was budget to budget savings. That means you are not being clear that the savings for replacing that teacher is your number. It means that you're telling me budget to budget, which means you're capturing the retirement savings, it falls off, and you're not telling me what the cost to replace that teacher would be. The actual savings would be greater if nobody retired, because from an actual savings perspective, because if no one retired, then you would not necessarily only get to have to capture the $86,000 cost of replacing that teacher. If you went and cut your bottom 8 teachers in terms of tenure, you likely would have seen a greater savings versus your budget to budget may not have, but the actual impact of the Princeton plan would have reduced the overall expenditure to the district by a greater number because your cost would have been higher per teacher. When you replace a retired teacher, it's only 86 grand, and it makes the savings look even smaller.
But you're not replacing them with no one. So in my eyes, that's a complete savings because
They retire anyway, Ally.
yeah, but it's not actually.
But we would have, if they retired.
That's the avoidance.
We would have rehired them.
That's why there's 2 columns.
Exactly. And
You're
so
never
that's where we're
you're never $2 million because of the Princeton plan. Ever,
We were never gonna get there.
ever.
At
That
the end of
was,
the
look, we're gonna debate this forever because we did an meeting. That was the calculation based on information at that time.
Well, budget to budget presentation.
Okay.
But we need like the real presentation to people to
But
know
the
the
budget to
impact of the
budget-
decision.
The budget to budget
It's
got
cost
into the tax avoidance
That's the
because
tax avoidance.
that was budget to budget. People wanted to know how much more would my taxes potentially go up
That
with
year.
or without the Princeton plan.
I think.
That was the
honestly,
calculation.
me, I think the issue is that these expenses were not factored in. That's
I
what,
mean,
that's
listen.
what gets me. And the fact that we added all this cost, whether we needed it or not, it happened very lightly, but the decision to do Princeton plan is close in terms of dollar value. So to me, as a parent, as a community member, as a board president, all of these things, I say, okay, so we're reducing and saving 726,000, but did we look at all these things that we're adding to the cost and we're netting out at, did we save anything? And we just uprooted the community.
So let me answer a couple of those comments. So what we also had done is part of that calculation for whatever it was at that time in that year. The calculation, what the board decided last year was not to reduce all the positions. There were 5 that we replaced. So we had what, 53 classroom sections last year. We have 46 right now. We could have gone down to 41. Right, that was part, those the number of teaching positions had been in that ballpark based on estimated results. We had decided a year ago, not a year ago, it was in, about January, early February, to not reduce all 5.
I remember that.
All right, to have more convenient class size or better class size, so on and so forth. So we can add numbers to this. The number can go up, the number can go down. The other numbers, because what I heard today was cost avoidance or opportunity costs. Then it would be fair to share, to say what the staffing pattern would look like if we had not gone to the Princeton plan.
Yes, but I want to just jump in because I don't think that doing nothing was the answer either. So I know the board had to act. Something had to be done because we had grades of 38 children in Furnace Woods and then big grades in BV that were having really large class sizes. So I'm just throwing in that there's no point in going back before because there had to be a change. We couldn't have just left it at
And that change was in the SWOT analysis. They talked, well, actually, your SWOT analysis, it was alluded to in the April 7th meeting that the redistricting was part of the SWOT analysis. That was something that the Board of Ed spoke about too. So I'm just saying, as a community member, when you're presenting information to people, especially like Enrique, I'm not a math person. So these budgets are very difficult for someone who's not a math person to follow. And I'm going to say that right now. it has to be in layman's terms, so people can understand it. You can't just say, well, we alluded to it, and I'm not saying that like that, but what if you're not a math person? And you're just thinking, oh, yes, I'm gonna save on my tax bill, 4.5% property tax. I mean, really, tell me what I'm saving right now. What is the Princeton plan saving me right now? And since I'm not a math person, I don't even want 4.5. I remember in the April 7th meeting, it was like, one of the board members said like 400, maybe someone 900 on their tax bill. So the number you're at now, what is that gonna save me? Is it $100?
Yeah.
Is it 50? Because that's me. That's what I would relate to.
So actually, I'm gonna ask one more question. Joe, how many sections did we have last year?
K5, 53,
And how many this year?
46.
That COVID.
So that's,
related, that
wait,
we
hold
had
on,
53?
guys, that's 7 sections.
Yeah, but 53, was that because we kept the class as smaller because of
So
COVID?
that was apples to apples.
So
53 to 46, and if we had additional ones, it could have gone 40.
So Enrique, do we have to revise the savings of $1,083,000? Because that's 7 sections that were reduced, not 8.
The 8th section was a music retirement that we did not need to rehire because of grade.
Got it. Thank
So
you.
I'm glad you asked. that.
Yes, I think that's important. Yeah.
And
So I got
however we want to articulate the, or account for the TAs, the 5 first grade TAs, that was, again, we're revising our conversations from last year.
I don't think
This is the first that if we want to apply that cost against the savings, I guess we can do that. To net it out. That wasn't the conversation we had.
In the decision making.
In the decision making last year. The decision the board had made last year, is around exactly what Alexis said and what everyone had said around supporting first grade. I'll have to go back and check, Jen. I'm not saying you're incorrect, but it was my understanding, and Margaret, maybe you know a little bit better, that one of the many reasons we wanted to have a TA at first grade was because not all of the elementaries always had a full-time TA at first grade.
Yes, and that was a surprise to us. Again, because principals were told you can assign TAs as you so desire.
And I'm not saying last year that it didn't happen. I'm saying that oftentimes that changes. They will allocate their people
Yes.
for many.
There are very
reasons.
different allocations.
But
right now.
if they were full-time in first grade and they had that finite number of TAs based on class sections, then there were not as many TAs working in grades 2 through 5 in one school as they would have been.
From my experience, and I was a pretty active parent, they were moved around as needed in the building. So I can speak to that. Even though my kids are in high school, they were moved around as needed in the building. So I don't want to rehash all that. I honestly don't want to rehash all that. It's not unnecessary. I want to make it very clear that when you guys made this decision a year or two ago, there were certain things that were not captured. We still are looking, I will go back to the April meeting where Corey asked for metrics tied to all of this, and we still don't have them this many months later. This consultant report we need.
Actually, at the April 7th meeting, Joe, you said that you could do budget comparison, bus ride time, student achievement, past performance to current performance, discipline, student parent experience through collective focus groups. And you said we owe it to everyone to see how we are doing.
We absolutely can. And we had spent, which is why we had spent time this summer in the retreat identifying that as a board goal, which we approved 2 weeks ago, which the board has said what will be those metrics. So that's why we have built what schools would look like if we didn't have the Princeton plan. That's why I was able to say, and if that's going to be a metric, we can talk about what we saved, and then we can talk about what we didn't spend. Because if we didn't have the Princeton plan, we would need to have hired 4 more teachers for this year. If we were 3 K-5 schools, we would
Even with redistricting?
no.
That's doing nothing.
Apples to apples.
Which
We
no one thought we
obviously,
should have done.
everyone knows that you had to do something.
Of course,
If we're
everyone
going to
knew.
compare apples to apples and look at what the reductions were, then it's fair to say, well, what would our budget look like, or what would our costs have looked like if we did not do the Princeton plan and just left 3 schools K through 5?
We,
All right, we built that school in the sandbox, we call it. We would have needed 4 more teachers to be at our existing Board of Education class size caps. What this board, or what last year's board did, was to reduce that, right? So if we wanted to have lower class sizes as we do today, by not reducing 5 additional teachers, all right? We wanted to have lower class sizes today. In last year's model, we would have needed 9 more teachers this year.
Who would do that? We're taking class sizes from 18 to 26. I mean, we're making the old board sound bad. Last year, we said, no, these kids are struggling. We're coming out of COVID. Why would we do that?
The caps.
Right? Like, let's not make this a negative.
We were really close to caps and we knew it would be very hard to ever get over cap because we knew we'd have 9 sections.
But Joe pointed that out because that's why, showing that why we did not capture the entire potential Princeton plan savings. That's all he's pointing out there.
But we're never, I mean, honestly, like, we're not gonna be able to go back. Like, let's be realistic here. We have to, well, we can't go back to the other class sizes. Like, there's a lot of different things here that we have to discuss. I'm gonna put it on record that the transportation piece disappoints me the absolute most, because we did not do enough work to ensure that our kids wouldn't be on buses for 45 minutes. They wouldn't be getting off the bus at 4 o'clock, that our families wouldn't be at bus stop. Like, and the impact of that and the cost of that, to me, is the most disappointing, because I'm going to be honest, you guys 2 years ago didn't ask enough questions about transportation. And it just,
so we did. I was watching videos today. We did. I went back to March 11th, 2021. Corey asked directly to Enrique about the increased costs, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying we did ask those questions, and what we were told is not necessarily what's been delivered.
Yes.
That there was going to be an increase in revenue, that there was going to be substantial increase in state aid, that the wear and tear will be negligible. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying we did ask questions.
Yeah, and wear and tear now, because we're driving so many more miles, means we're going to be retiring buses much sooner.
I think the problem too is that this was a discussion that was had once and then you guys voted.
Yeah, it wasn't.
So I think that the board did not see, it was said, I just watched April 7th meeting as well. And because it was a policy revision, it didn't have to be put up more than once. So it wasn't discussed a lot unless there was, you doing your, each member doing their homework.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we saw the same experience that past trustees had. That's all.
So I guess as a trustee, I want to know, like, does this presentation type, does that answer your questions? Or do we, obviously I've been writing questions, Jen's writing down follow-up questions, but, so what, like, what do we?
I think that the questions that we have to be addressed, because that's a planning thing moving forward. We're not going to fix where we are. We're not going to fix years of decisions. We're not going to fix, this school year and what things cost. But in terms of planning and entering into our budget planning and our finance committee, I think that we need to know a little bit about what our resources are, and how we could better use them, making sure that everybody has what they need. And it'll be really important for planning.
I'd also like to add that I'd like to see a lot more information before we make decisions in general, particularly things that are going to cost us money, to make sure that we're not flying the plane while we build it always, because I think we've recognized through this that maybe big projects have a lot more impact than we are capable of anticipating. And I don't want to spend more taxpayer money without certainty when it comes to new I know what's the word I'm trying to look for. I don't want to call any one particular item out, but I'm going to say, if we look for new initiatives as a board, I'm not super comfortable just saying, yeah, that's great, let's go do it. I want to make sure that we understand that there's an actual understanding of the expense that's going to be tied to this, and that we have an exceptional project management team in place, because yes, a plan, not a hope, something that is going to be tangible, and someone who's measuring it along the way, because it took us let's be honest, the only reason we're having this financial conversation today, because we pushed really hard since the summer to have it. And it was just put up on board docs today.
Yeah.
So I would like to make sure that we're going to be very, 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 very diligent in making sure that we aren't just willy-nilly with taxpayer money.
The board docs decision was something that leadership struggled with because Enrique started working on this and put it together so awesome for us quickly without the expectation that it was going to be on board doc just yet. And it's not as polished as maybe he would have hoped it, would be or whatever. And it's very difficult to understand this without having Enrique walk me through it.
Yep.
So putting it out on board docs was a decision that I personally pushed for this morning because I thought that if we're sitting here looking at something, the public should too. However, I really hope that they watch Enrique walk through it because that's the only way really to understand it. So
I'm grateful you had it put on board docs. Thank you.
And I think what we need, you're asking what we need at the end of this. Yeah. Other than, whatever consulting busing was done. So I said like a few weeks ago, we got to look at that so we can see what we can fix. We need to see the numbers on one full page of what we are saving, projected, like at the end of the day, what the number is with the busing, the TAs and everything on there.
Thank you for going through that, Enrique. I know it was a lot and
Thank you.
was to put together and then to review. Thank you very much.
we ask you enough questions. I don't think we've ever asked Enrique so many questions. We're gonna sleep healthily. Thank you, Enrique.
I told I was able to.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're at our audience comment section.
Rachel has left. She signed up and also.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, where am I? The resolutions and okay. So we're to our committee reports. Let's start with those and then we'll go on to our, or do you guys want to do NISBA first? Okay, let's do NISBA. Do our vote. All right. So the last board meeting, we brought this up and we wanted to wait for Jen to be back. Now we're missing Corey, so there's no winning here. And we are responsible to the state to agree to elect nominate somebody, not elect, for the Area 10 director position. I had shared out a little bit about both people, the information that was given to me at least a few weeks ago, and we just have to decide who we want to nominate for this position. I think Jen or I, there's like a link, we cast the vote online. Okay. So last time, Stephanie, you weren't here, Jen, so Stephanie had said a few things about.
I watched it.
Okay.
I'm good.
All
I
right.
can vote.
Okay.
Should we just do it? You want to just a hand count?
Yeah, that's all we have to do. I checked with Carmen to make sure we didn't need a resolution on it. Okay. So who would like to vote for Cheryl Brady? All right. And who would like to vote for Deborah Gotti? Great. Okay. Now, Jen, you want to take us through the NISBA resolution?
Actually, Erica covered.
Erica
covered me for 6 hours, so I'm gonna do it.
We'll do this in like 2 minutes.
I'm gonna try to do this in 2 minutes. Actually, all I'm gonna say about this is that I sat for the 6 hours, we went through every single resolution, through the whole process. A quorum was 200. At first, there was like 270 or 280. It started to dwindle down towards the end and they were getting nervous they wouldn't have a quorum, but they actually did, and they got through all 43 resolutions. Carmen posted the document today with the past resolutions, what was adopted and what was adopted with amendments and what wasn't adopted. So anyone in the public can review that anytime. So that's done. That was the annual meeting. And they really didn't touch on anything else in that annual meeting because this was so long.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Right. So committee reports.
Sure. Jeremy and I were at safety committee last week. We talked about providing uniform access to county and state police to all of our schools.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get into the details of what that is, but making sure that they know what to expect and that it's the same for all of our buildings. The other thing, a lot of people talked about the high school PA, so a little update on that. Phase 1 is being implemented next month, which is the PA systems in like the band room, right?
There's 4, I think there's 3 or 4 identified areas.
Right, which
that
is
need
they were
work.
waiting on parts anticipated to be done by like Thanksgiving time. Then there's phase 2 that they're waiting on grant writing and approval that might do message boards where sometimes like in the cafeteria or in the gymnasium, you can't necessarily hear an alarm, but it would be a visual. So that we'll have more updates for you in a couple of months about that one. Anything else, Jeremy?
No, that covers most of it. Some best practice to make sure that there's certain items that aren't regularly used being used as point of entry for the team.
Yeah.
As opposed to always flagging with their card, which was great. So this way you don't have to find out about them.
Right, just kind of some of how our staff self checks itself.
Yeah, exactly right.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other committee?
We did, facilities met, so, Steph, Erica and I met with Anthony and Enrique this past week. 5 topics or 6 topics were, the first one was the repair reserve update from last year, the $100,000 that the board approved. There was work done at Blue Mountain, BB, and Frank G. All the work at BB and Frank G is complete, and the work at Blue Mountain is underway. They're just waiting on some final roofing. It's in progress. They're waiting on some final finishing touches, but no issues. And Anthony was very grateful. The next one was the BCS. So the architect will have a draft report in mid-November. So we'll have our next facilities meeting right following that with a final report in January. And so then we'll be able to report out from there. EPC, energy performance contract, is underway. No hiccups or no real huge updates. We didn't talk to EPC, but no issues. And most of that is around lighting, just so everyone knows, going to LED lights pretty much throughout the district that is not already LED lights. The next one is the BB cafeteria. So it's finally at SCD for review. They're hoping, Enrique believes, by the end of the year that review will be complete. And so he's planning to go out to bid in January. And we just talked about the finances, which are all lined up for work to begin in next summer. That's the plan. The BB.
Why don't you tell them the finances, or let me tell them, because Joe spoke with Senator Pete Hartman. Senator Pete Hartman. And if you remember last year, we pushed very hard to get our wealth ratio for this year. They couldn't do it, but they said, okay, your consolation price is $1 million. So I take the consolation price every time. So we're going to use that most of that $1 million. If you remember, the voters approved $100,000 in the budget. That's 1.1, and $700,000 from the cafeteria fund balance. So that's how we're planning to fund this project.
And that'll be done in the summer, right? It takes the summer.
Yes.
I mean, expected, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So next year, those kids will have a new cafeteria.
State of the art.
Yeah, that's great.
So then there was some elementary school roofing areas that were being done, and there's actually a contractor coming to meet with Anthony on Monday to review those. And then was there anything else? I think that covered it.
That covers. The only other thing was that the few items missing, the auditorium has a couple of things that are still being finalized, and all the parts are ordered. And I think one of the switches was like a 10-week order or something. So hopefully it's in and by the time we have the next musical, because we're having a play, but then it's gonna take 10 weeks to get the item, and then sound is, we have everything we need.
So, right, it appears, right, we are gonna have to rent sound equipment one more time for the fall performance, just like we did in the spring. And for our Hassan, because he graduates this year, we hope to have the real stuff, the real shebang for these kids that are waiting for it. So so that is where we're at. You guys have anything else? That's great.
Any other new business committees?
We have, Jeremy and I had 2 meetings with internal auditors and external auditors. I can give you a quick update on the internal audit report. It's still in draft form. We're going to make a couple of, we have a meeting tomorrow to make minor modifications to make sure we're all on the same page, but we're really in good shape. We completed our targeted focus areas for last year, and we're in cycle review for, looks like, with human resources and cybersecurity. And we have a couple of other call outs just to make sure that we're on the up and up, and our processes internally are all where they need to be, and that we're meeting, best practices and best standards. So we're good with that.
We had external audit committee as well. That was today with O'Connor Davies. They gave us an unmodified opinion, which is the highest ranking an entity can receive. So that's a nice compliment to those people. The S&P rating that we have is A+. So it's not the highest you can have, but it's pretty dang good. I think, what is it? The US government is AA+. So we're only 2 slots behind the United States government in terms of our ranking, which is pretty fantastic. We generated a surplus. We were able to reduce expenses and increase revenue. And as a result, I'm sure people know this already, but we did add $4 million to our fund balance. So all in all, they seem very happy and complimented our team for doing a great job.
That's great. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to touch on the a couple of things. PTA meetings. I went to the SEPTA meeting and the high school PTA meeting. I spoke at both of those. I think.
Yeah, I went to Blue Mountain. We talked about the need for maybe one more fundraiser, so they're looking for ideas. Principals update. Dances tomorrow.
The dances tomorrow. I know the high school had their big event. They had a big event yesterday here, Haunted High School, in the support of the Pumpkin Pops. Also, and I'm going to give just a couple plugs because they talked about this. One of those music fundraiser, mattress fundraiser. I just want to make sure I'm right on the date. It's coming in November 13th. So come support that.
Where's that? I'm sorry.
It's a mattress fundraiser for the music department directly. And we also have
to buy a mattress.
Yeah. Can you tell me what that is?
You can buy mattresses and they're discounted, and
They work with
it's really great.
I think it's a great idea. I've never heard of it. I mean, talk about creative fundraiser.
In the past, they've set up in the cafeteria. Also, basically have a showroom of mattresses, and you can come and bounce on them and test them. Maybe not anymore, but
my wife left. I was seeing if we needed.
And
that's great.
Elementary has the fall festival.
unique.
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah, elementary has a fall festival this weekend on Saturday. So stop by there. And then I think that all 3 of the PTAs have Spirit Square stores open right now, and they're closing this weekend. So I think that's all my notes.
That's something.
I just wanted to add at the Blue Mountain Middle School, the PTA, that they were going to start offering homework help after school for kids. I think it's starting next week.
You know, we just approved it.
Yeah, and so I think that's really great.
Yeah, new item request. So I know we talked about having the elementary school principal.
Yes.
come in. Do we have a date for that?
We have our laundry list of
We have a list.
future events that we're.
It was a hopeful
calendarized.
November item.
Yeah. So we have 2 meetings in November and maybe one in December.
We're just talking about it. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. The December meeting, change. Look on the Google Doc. I think it went from the 14th to the 15th. I'll confirm. And we'll get that lined up. Alexis, Ally and I have a list of
everyone, that's
Presentation.
principals, the
Yes.
strategic plan, the kind of metrics, conversations, to sign dates. So Joe is putting a draft together and Alexis and I are gonna review it and then share it out.
Awesome. Great. We're all ready to go home now?
Yeah.
Hi. I have a motion to close the meeting.
Yep.
Second?
All in favor? Put my hand up.